Chapter 1609. Needless to say, Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that he, who had broken through to the transcendent realm, wouldn't be able to fight back at all. He didn't even have the chance to take out his war god's armor. Who was it? At this moment, a little girl appeared in front of him. One side of her face was covered by her hair and only the left side of her face could be seen. At this moment, the little girl was staring at him. And the little girl's dagger was still in his chest. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't move. Because he knew that if he moved, he would die without a doubt. That dagger had directly locked the life force in his body. Right now, he was finished. The only reason he wasn't dead was because the little girl didn't want to kill him. The little girl threw Yi Xian a cold look. Then she turned around to look at the broken statue on the ground. As she looked at it, her face gradually turned hideous. All of a sudden, she roared in anger. Ah! Boom! This roar caused the entire starry sky to collapse. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this woman has definitely surpassed the transcendent realm. The scariest thing was that this woman was an assassin. Who could withstand this? At this moment, Mu Xiaodao's voice sounded in his mind. Back then, there was an internal conflict in the Cosmos God Court. The reason was that the Cosmos God Court wanted to remove the statue. Then, she killed hundreds of thousands of experts from the Cosmos God Court. She even almost killed the Cosmos God Court's court lord at that time. If the laws of the cosmos hadn't stopped her, she might have killed everyone in the Cosmos God Court. Yi Xian's expression turned ugly. Damn! The Cosmos God Court wanted to remove the statue, but they were almost killed by this little girl. Now, he had destroyed this statue. He didn't know if an apology could resolve this peacefully. At this moment, the little girl turned to look at Yi Xian. She stared at Yi Xian. The killing intent in her eyes was the most terrifying killing intent that Yi Xian had ever seen in his life. Just this gaze alone was enough to make countless people tremble in fear. This little girl had definitely killed a lot of people. Just as the little girl was about to attack, a woman suddenly stood in front of Yi Xian. Wu Ku. Seeing Wu Ku suddenly stand in front of Yi Xian, the experts of the Cosmos God Court were stunned. What was going on? Wu Ku was a war king. Why was she helping Yi Xian? Yi Xian was confused when he saw Wu Ku. Why was this woman here? Moreover, looking at the surrounding Cosmos God Court experts, they seemed to recognize her. Could she be from the Cosmos God Court? The little girl looked at Wu Ku. Wu Ku slapped Yi Xian's shoulder, and a powerful force surged into Yi Xian's body. The little girl's dagger was directly forced out, but Yi Xian's vitality was disappearing at an extremely fast speed. The speed at which it disappeared was something that even the immortal bloodline couldn't recover. Luckily, he had Xiao Ta's purple gas. The purple gas, the immortal bloodline, and the self-healing ability of the war god armor saved his life. After his life was saved, Yi Xian immediately activated the war god armor. At this moment, he really felt that he was in danger, so he decisively activated the war god armor. After the war god armor was activated, Yi Xian's confidence skyrocketed. At this moment, he felt that he could kill gods and exterminate immortals. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and was about to attack. At this moment, Wu Ku suddenly said, "Go. Go." Yi Xian blinked. "I can." Wu Ku looked at Yi Xian. "This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page." "Go." Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the little girl suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. In the next moment, a dagger suddenly stabbed out of his chest. Yi Xian was stunned. Where was the war god armor? The invincible war god armor? Yi Xian's mind was in a mess. He didn't expect that his war god armor would be useless. At this moment, Yi Xian's mind was buzzing. As soon as the little girl attacked, Wu Ku disappeared as well. Boom! An explosion suddenly resounded, and in the next moment, the little girl returned to her original position. Wuku returned to his original position as well, but at this moment, there was an extremely deep knife wound on her abdomen. The little girl looked at Wuku, and the dagger that was originally stuck in Yi Xian's chest appeared in her hand again. Wuku stared at the little girl. Go. The dagger in her hand was personally forged by you when you were the master of the universe. It can even easily tear the laws of the universe apart. It's not something that the armor you're wearing can compare to. Actually, Yi Xian wasn't dead yet because the recovery ability of the immortal bloodline, the violet aura, and the war god armor were too abnormal. Of course, it was also because Wuku stopped the little girl. Otherwise, he would be dead. At this moment, Tu's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Retreat first. This person isn't someone you can defeat. Yi Xian didn't think too much. He immediately activated the space-time shuttle boots and disappeared on the spot. The little girl glanced at the spot where Yi Xian disappeared and suddenly swung her knife. Hundreds of thousands of miles away, Yi Xian, who had just walked out of a certain space, had a drastic change in his expression. He turned around and slashed with his sword. Boom! The sword light shattered instantly, and Yi Xian retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away. When he stopped, the position where his war god armor's throat was already cracked. Not only was the war god armor cracked, but even his throat was torn apart. Yi Xian disappeared on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already hundreds of thousands of miles away. After stopping, Yi Xian's expression became extremely grave. That little girl was too terrifying. She was definitely an expert at the mortal destruction realm, or even higher. Damn it. Why are my enemies always so much stronger than me? And this war god armor, damn it, could it be a fake? As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Xiao Ta, where's your warning? Xiao Ta fell silent for a short moment before he said, Young master, I can't sense her. She attacked too quickly. By the time I felt her dagger had already pierced into your chest. I'm very helpless as well. Yi Xian's face darkened. I'm even more helpless. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian turned around and looked over. Would Tu and that ancestor be in danger? Suddenly, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind. Leave quickly. She's gone to look for you. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this, and he hurriedly activated the space-time shuttle boots. In the next moment, he vanished on the spot. However, a strand of blood sprayed onto the ground at the instant he vanished. It was naturally Yi Xian's blood. Meanwhile, a little girl appeared here. It was that nameless little girl. As soon as the little girl appeared here, Wuku appeared here as well. But in the next moment, the little girl suddenly vanished once more. Wuku's expression instantly became unsightly when she witnessed this scene, and she swiftly turned around to look over. In the next moment, she'd vanished on the spot. She could only follow Yi Xian because she knew that the little girl would pursue Yi Xian until she killed Yi Xian. On the other side, Yi Xian had just appeared in an expanse of the starry sky, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This chapter isn't finished. Please keep going. A wisp of blood seeped out from his wound, and there was an extremely deep injury on his stomach. As soon as he appeared in this expanse of the starry sky, Yi Xian activated the space-time shuttle boots once more. In the next moment, he vanished once more. At the instant that he vanished, the space where he stood was suddenly torn apart, and another strand of blood sprayed on the spot. Wuku had appeared here again, but the little girl wasn't here. Wuku's expression instantly turned gloomy, and she vanished once more. At a certain spatial passageway, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed drastically as he swiftly turned around, and he saw a little girl walking over slowly from the end of the passageway. She's here again. Yi Xian immediately left the spatial passageway, and he swiftly turned around and swung his sword when he appeared in an expanse of the starry sky. At this moment, he'd immediately utilized the dark mirror of heaven and earth. 10 clones and his true body. 11 rays of light slashed down in a straight line, and the space in front of him was instantly torn apart. However, it only took a moment for those 12 rays of light to shatter into pieces. At the same time, a dagger suddenly stabbed his chest. Fortunately, his true body had vanished. He'd activated the spacetime shuttle boots at the instant that he attacked. However, it was still too late. His chest had still been struck by a stab. The combat god's armor wasn't completely useless. At the very least, it could slow down the little girl's dagger for a moment, and it could save his life. Because if it wasn't for the combat god's armor, then the little girl's dagger would have instantly destroyed the vitality within his body. Actually, Yi Xian was extremely aggrieved at this moment. It was the combat god's armor. The Earth Spirit clan's ultimate treasure. However, it was as weak as a piece of paper before this woman. This was too tragic. He even wondered if the Earth Spirit clan had really given him a fake. Actually, the combat god's armor was even more tragic. At this moment, the spirit of the combat god's armor was extremely aggrieved as well. It had just come out, yet it had suffered a vicious beating. How tragic. What kind of immortals and demons did my master encounter? Under normal circumstances, even an expert who'd surpassed the mortal breaking stage couldn't break through its defenses with such ease. However, that woman was clearly abnormal. In the starry sky, Yi Xian surveyed his surroundings. He took out the universal apparatus and was about to perform long-distance teleportation. However, at this moment, the space behind him suddenly split open. At the moment of the split, a cold light had already appeared above his head. Yi Xian's expression changed, and he immediately activated the spacetime boots. However, when he appeared in another part of the starry sky, his expression froze. This was because he realized that the little girl was right in front of him. She was faster than him. Yi Xian immediately activated the spacetime boots again. When he appeared in an unknown part of the starry sky, the little girl was still in front of him. It was as if the two of them hadn't moved at all. The little girl just stared at Yi Xian. This time, Yi Xian didn't activate the magical shuttle boots. Instead, he activated the invisible armor. After activating the invisible armor, he directly entered an unknown world. At this moment, he could see the little girl. After Yi Xian disappeared, the little girl didn't leave. She looked around as if she was looking for Yi Xian, but it seemed that she couldn't find him. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the unknown world he'd entered was very special. Even the little girl couldn't find him. However, at this moment, a face suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the little girl. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. End of this chapter. Chapter 1610. I'm finished. That was the only thought in Yi Xian's mind at this moment. Right now, he could no longer escape. Yi Xian tried hard to calm himself down. The more it was a matter of life and death, the more calm he had to be. The little girl just looked at Yi Xian and didn't make a move. Yi Xian didn't say anything either. He just looked at the little girl, and the two of them looked at each other. For some reason, the little girl's gaze suddenly became slightly blank as she looked at him. At this moment, Yi Xian turned around and vanished. After returning to reality, Yi Xian activated the spacetime shoes and vanished on the spot. In that unknown world, the little girl's gaze was still slightly blank. After some time, she raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. She noticed some white dots of light. The little girl glanced coldly at those white dots of light, and then she vanished on the spot. In another part of the starry sky, Yi Xian had just walked out from a certain space when Wu Ku appeared in front of him. Wu Ku grabbed Yi Xian's shoulder and vanished with him. Hiss! As soon as the two of them vanished, the space where they were standing was torn apart, and the little girl walked out. The little girl looked around and frowned slightly because she noticed that Yi Xian's aura had vanished. A moment later, the little girl vanished on the spot. On the other side, Yi Yi Xian was brought to a continent by Wu Ku, and there was a thin screen of light around them. Yi Xian asked hurriedly, "Miss, who is that little girl?" Wu Ku glanced at Yi Xian, god-killer of the Cosmos Divine Court. Yi Xian asked, "Above the mortal-breaking realm?" Wu Ku said, "At least mortal-destroying realm." "At least mortal-destroying realm." Yi Xian fell silent. In other words, it could be above mortal-destroying realm. Wu Ku continued, "Her dagger is called God-slaying. It was personally made for her by the first master of the Cosmos Divine Court, and it's one of the 3 exalted god weapons. Not to mention your armor, that dagger can even hurt the laws of the universe." As she spoke, she glanced at the Ares armor on Yi Xian's body. "Your armor is also insane. Even I can't break through your defense. There are no more than 5 people in this world who can break through your armor so easily, and she happens to be one of them." At this point, she seemed to have thought of something and added, "The laws of the universe are not human." Yi Xian was speechless. As they spoke, Wu Ku brought Yi Xian to a huge stone palace. The stone palace was dilapidated, and it was obvious that it had been here for countless years. Wu Ku bowed slightly towards the stone palace. "Ancestor, please show yourself." "Ancestor." Yi Xian glanced at Wu Ku. Just as he was about to speak, a voice suddenly rang out from the stone hall. The next moment, a white figure slowly rose from the stone palace. It was a white-robed old man. The old man was dressed in a white robe and his hair and beard were all white. He looked rather old and had an indifferent expression. The old man looked at Wu Ku. "What's the matter?" Wu Ku was about to speak when the old man suddenly looked into the distance. There, a little girl was slowly walking towards them. Seeing this little girl, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Damn, this woman is really fast." Wu Ku bowed slightly. "Ancestor, this person wants to kill me." Hearing this, the old man frowned. "I don't think she wants to kill you." After the little girl appeared, her eyes were fixed on Yi Xian. Wu Ku looked at the old man. "This is my husband." "Husband." Hearing this, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. The old man's frown deepened. He looked at Yi Xian, and soon, his frown gradually eased. Breaking through the mortal realm. Reaching the breaking mortal realm at such a young age, not bad indeed. As he spoke, he paused and said, "What do your parents do?" Yi Xian was a little confused. What do parents do? He didn't know what to say. At this moment, Wu Ku suddenly said, "Just tell me the truth." Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, "My father is a swordsman and likes to wander around. I don't know what he does exactly." Hearing this, the old man frowned slightly. What the Wu clan needed was not a genius, but a powerful foreign aid. Thinking of this, the old man looked at Wu Ku. "If you agree to the marriage with the Nanli clan, I will save him." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face instantly became a little ugly. So this old man was asking about his parents just now. Wu Ku looked at the old man. "He's good enough, isn't he?" The old man shook his head. "It doesn't matter if a person is good enough. What we need is a powerful foreign aid." Wu Ku looked at Yi Xian. "What does your father do?" Yi Xian was a little helpless. "I only know that he is a swordsman. Although he is alone, he is quite good at fighting." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "No matter how good a person is, what's the point? Young man, you are very good to have reached the breaking mortal realm at such a young age. Your future is limitless. But you must understand that in this world, talent and hard work aren't the only things that matter. Because a person's talent and hard work are limited. In this era, background is everything. Without a strong background, no matter how hard a person works, can he beat those second generations? Because their starting point might be the end that you will never be able to reach in your lifetime." Yi Xian was speechless. The old man continued. "Young man, I won't beat around the bush. Although you are very good, your family isn't worthy of the Wu clan. Yi Xian pulled Wu Ku's sleeve. Is the Wu clan stronger than the Cosmos God Court? Wu Ku shook his head. No. Yi Xian looked at the old man and was speechless. Damn, so arrogant. I thought the Wu clan was a clan that could beat the Cosmos God Court like their own sons. At this moment, the old man looked at Wu Ku. If you agree, I will save his life today. Wu Ku was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, I don't need it. The old man looked at Yi Xian. You don't need it? Yi Xian ignored the old man. He looked at Wu Ku. Little Ku, if you agree to his conditions, we will no longer be friends. I, Yi Xian, can lose, can die, but I will never beg others. I don't need you to sacrifice anything to save me. I really don't need it. Do you understand? Wu Ku didn't speak. The old man continued, Young man, it's not wrong to be arrogant. But... Yi Xian suddenly looked at the little girl. Do it. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. She didn't speak or make a move. At this moment, Wu Ku looked at the old man. Ancestor, go back. The old man looked at Wu Ku. The clan will not agree to you being with her. Yi Xian suddenly said, I want to be with her. Wu Ku looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man. If I, Yi Xian, don't die today, I will bring my father to the Wu clan to propose marriage. The old man looked at Yi Xian. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to return alive. As he spoke, his body gradually became illusory and disappeared. After the old man disappeared, Yi Xian opened his palm. A sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the little girl. What surprised him was that the little girl didn't make a move after so long. Moreover, she still showed herself. One should know that assassins who don't show themselves are the most terrifying. Wu Ku also looked at the little girl. Her expression was solemn. If it was a normal one-on-one fight, she could still handle the little girl. However, this little girl was an assassin. Once the little girl chose to assassinate her, she wouldn't be able to do anything. At this moment, the little girl suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and he instinctively wanted to escape. However, he didn't because the little girl had no intention of making a move. It should be said that the little girl had already gone easy on him many times. At this thought, Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, Do you want to talk to me? The little girl nodded. Seeing this, Yi Xian blinked and hurriedly nodded. Talk. Let's have a good talk. Fighting and killing is really not good. This universe should be more harmonious. As he spoke, he walked towards the little girl. Wu Ku suddenly pulled him back. Yi Xian smiled. If she really wants to make a move, we won't be able to stop her, right? Wu Ku hesitated for a moment before he nodded. Yi Xian walked to the little girl. He had to admit that he was still slightly panicking. This little girl is really abnormal. Yi Xian walked to the little girl. The little girl looked at him and didn't say a word. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, What do you want to talk about? The little girl suddenly passed a small wooden figurine in her hand to Yi Xian. The wooden figurine looked exactly like the little girl, and it was slightly shabby. Yi Xian took the wooden figurine and sized it up. After that, he looked at the little girl. Do you want me to carve a new one for you? The little girl nodded. Yi Xian thought for a moment before he said, I'll carve a wooden figurine for you, and the enmity between us will be written off. How about that? The little girl looked at Yi Xian and didn't say a word. Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. I'll carve it for you first. As he spoke, he took out a wooden figurine and started carving it. Cosmos God Court. At this moment, a battle was still going on in front of the God Court. And the Yang clan woman's combat strength was truly too ferocious. After the Yang clan woman activated her bloodline, she was practically suppressing the God Monarch. On the other hand, the battle between Tu and Yen Xiaoxiao was slightly strange. At this moment, Tu was still within the myriad space and couldn't come out. However, Yan Xiaoxiao couldn't do anything to her. Of course, it was only a matter of time for Tu to come out. Meanwhile, the god official suddenly said, "Stop the two of them. Don't let them rescue Yi Xian." The little girl had already gone to pursue Yi Xian. So long as the two of them were stopped, then Yi Xian would definitely die. Once the little girl returned, the two of them would definitely die as well. So what they had to do now was to stop Tu and the Yang clan woman. Within the myriad space, Tu's expression gradually became ferocious. She knew that with Yi Xian's current strength, it was utterly impossible for him to stop the little girl. She had to go out. Tu started to swing her sword madly, and the space within the myriad space started to shatter. Forcefully break. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned slightly. She looked at the white-clothed man who held a spear in the distance. "Go in." The white-clothed man nodded and directly entered the myriad space to stop Tu together. On the other side, the god official stopped and stared at the Yang clan woman. No one can escape her assassination. Yi Xian must die. As he spoke, he directly rushed out. In front of the stone temple, Yi Xian handed the carved wooden figurine to the little girl. The little girl looked at the new wooden figurine, and her gaze gradually became somewhat infatuated. Yi Xian was about to speak, but a stream of clear liquid suddenly flowed out of the little girl's eyes. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not far behind the little girl. It was the undying old man. The undying old man glanced at Wu Ku. "How dare you betray the bloodshed god palace?" As he spoke, he looked at the little girl. "Your Excellency, I'll hold this traitor back. You kill that Yi Xian." As he spoke, he was about to make his move. But at this moment, the little girl suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a dagger slashed across the undying old man's throat. Chi! The undying old man's head immediately flew off, and blood spurted out like a fountain. The undying old man was dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Betrayal again? Not only the undying old man, but Yi Xian and Wu Ku were also somewhat dumbfounded. At this moment, the little girl suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She slowly knelt down and continuously kowtowed. "Yes. No. Rise." Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Recently, many people have been saying that I only update 2 times a day. I'm not convinced. Can you give me a ticket? I want to ask in a weak voice. Even one will do. Chapter 1611. Yi Xian was dumbfounded by the little girl's sudden actions. What's going on? Just like the undying old man, he was also dumbfounded. What's this little girl doing? The little girl was still kowtowing continuously. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he helped the little girl up. "You," the little girl looked at Yi Xian. Tears were still flowing from her eyes. "That's right. I can't." Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Ku. Wu Ku remained silent. He knew what was going on. The little girl must have discovered Yi Xian's identity. The relationship between the little girl and Yi Xian in his previous life was definitely not simple. Yi Xian stopped asking when he saw Wu Ku's silence. He looked at the little girl, and the little girl was still saying, "Yes. No." As she spoke, she placed the dagger in Yi Xian's hand, and then she pulled Yi Xian's hand and placed the dagger between her brows. Obviously, she wanted Yi Xian to kill her. Yi Xian looked at the little girl who was begging for death, and he felt inexplicably complicated. He knew that if he wanted to, he could really kill the little girl at this moment. The little girl was really begging for death, and she wanted him to kill her with his own hands. He didn't know why, and he didn't know why the little girl was acting like this. Perhaps she thought he was someone else. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian put down the supreme artifact in his hand, and then he smiled and said, "I forgive you." Forgive? The little girl's body instantly trembled when she heard Yi Xian's words. She just looked at Yi Xian, and her tears poured down as if she had made up her mind. Yi Xian gently wiped the tears off the little girl's face and smiled, "I forgive you." The little girl suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand and said hoarsely, "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Really?" The little girl suddenly hugged Yi Xian. She hugged Yi Xian tightly. Although she was still crying, a smile appeared on her face for the first time in over 100,000 years. Yi Xian gently patted the little girl's back, his mind still a little confused. This little girl might really have mistaken him for someone else. What he didn't understand was who the little girl thought he was. Could he be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Thinking of this, Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Ku and sent a voice transmission, "Little Ku, do you think I can impersonate the founder of the Cosmos God Court?" Wu Ku's eyelids twitched, but he did not speak. Yi Xian asked again, "Can you?" Wu Ku thought about it and nodded. "Maybe we can give it a try." Yi Xian chuckled and was about to speak when he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, "Shit. Qing'er and my ancestor are still in the Cosmos God Court." Saying that, he looked at the little girl in his arms, "Can you help me fight?" The little girl looked up at Yi Xian, "Kill, who?" Yi Xian blinked his eyes, "I can kill anyone." The little girl nodded, Include me, Yi Xian." At the side, Wu Ku shook his head and sighed in his heart, "The Cosmos God Court is finished." Very soon, the three of them disappeared. After they vanished, a woman suddenly appeared here. She wore a colorful dress, and her long hair was tied into a ponytail. It was very long, and it reached her butt. Moreover, her right hand was placed behind her back as she gazed towards the distance. A long time passed before she spoke softly, "I'm too late." Saying that, she suddenly looked at the undying old man. At this moment, the undying old man's head was already separated from his body and his soul had dissipated. He couldn't be any more dead. The woman suddenly opened her palm and clenched it lightly, "Gather." As soon as her voice resounded, the distant space suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless crystal blue specks floated over from all directions, and they gradually condensed into a soul. The undying old man's soul. After the soul was condensed, the undying old man's eyes were filled with confusion, but they gradually became clear. When he saw the woman, his pupils constricted as if he'd noticed something, and then he slowly knelt down. The woman grinned, "Go to the Cosmos Palace." The undying old man hurriedly said, "Yes." In next to no time, the two of them vanished. The Cosmos God Court. At this moment, Tu was still within the myriad space, and the white-clothed man who held a spear was standing before her. The white-clothed man stared fixedly at Tu with an extremely serious gaze. Tu's sword was too terrifying. If it wasn't for Yan Xiaoxiao's help, he wouldn't be a match for Tu at all. Moreover, even with Yan Xiaoxiao's help, it would still be extremely difficult for him to fight Tu head-on. Fortunately, he and Yan Xiaoxiao were only responsible for delaying Tuesday. Right at this moment, Tu suddenly took a step forward, and the sword in her hand flew out. In an instant, the entire myriad space was filled with sword light that tore everything apart. The white-clothed man's expression changed drastically, and he took a step forward as well before he stabbed with his spear. At the instant his spear stabbed out, countless spear lights rained down, and in an instant, the entire myriad space was covered in sword light and spear light. Rumble. The myriad space started to tremble violently while the spear lights shattered into pieces. Moreover, the space there started to crack inch by inch. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned when she witnessed this scene. She knew that the myriad space was unable to trap the swordsman any longer. Sure enough, the myriad space suddenly exploded apart and transformed into countless pieces of space. At the instant that the myriad space shattered, the white-clothed man was suddenly blasted over 3 kilometers away by a strand of sword light. He just stopped when a strand of sword light suddenly arrived in front of him. The white-clothed man's pupils constricted because it was too swift, and he was utterly unable to resist it. But right at this moment, a talisman shield appeared in front of him. Bang! The talisman shield had forcefully resisted Tu's attack. Tu opened her palm, and the sword flew directly back into her hand. She turned to look at Yan Xiaoxiao, and Yan Xiaoxiao looked at Tu as well. The two of them just stared at each other. Tu was just about to attack when the divine official and the Yang clan's woman in the distance suddenly stopped. The divine official glanced at Tu and the Yang clan's woman. He's probably dead. Tu turned to look at the divine official when she heard this. The divine official looked at Tu and said, "No one can escape from her." Is that so? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. The divine official turned to look and saw a man walking over slowly from afar. It was Yi Xian. Wu Ku was by Yi Xian's side as well. Tu's expression instantly eased up when she saw Yi Xian. Actually, she was extremely worried about Yi Xian just now because even she felt threatened by that little girl. The divine official's eyes instantly narrowed when he saw Yi Xian. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he suddenly pressed his palms together. "Heaven and earth protect me." As soon as his voice resounded, an illusory shield appeared around him. However, a dagger had stabbed into his head the moment the shield appeared. Hiss! Blood sprayed. All the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court were stunned when they witnessed this scene, including Mu Xiaodao and the others. Who killed the divine official? Meanwhile, a little girl appeared in front of the divine official, and the divine official stared fixedly at her. Why? The little girl suddenly drew her dagger and slashed. Hiss! The divine official's head flew into the air. He was instantly killed. The expressions of the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court became solemn when they witnessed this scene. No, it was fear. Deep fear. Because it was the little girl, the god of slaughter of the Cosmos Divine Court. After the little girl killed the divine official, she turned to look at Yan Xiaoxiao and the others. She suddenly vanished. At this moment, a mysterious force suddenly enveloped Yan Xiaoxiao. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned slightly. She was about to attack when a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of her. The middle-aged man smashed his fist forward, and it just happened to hit the dagger. Bang! The space in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers collapsed at this moment. The person who attacked was the current God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court. The little girl suddenly vanished on the spot after her attack failed. The God Master frowned slightly and raised his right hand to block to his right. Hiss! A cold light struck the God Master's right arm, causing blood to spray. In the next moment, another cold light appeared at the God Master's throat, but it was blocked by a hand. Bang! The God Master retreated by over 1 kilometer. As he retreated, rays of cold light flickered incessantly around him, and every single ray of cold light carried a strand of blood with it. Yan Xiaoxiao frowned slightly when she saw this. She was just about to attack when a strand of sword energy enveloped her. 2. Yan Xiaoxiao fell silent. She couldn't help the God Master because Tu would attack if she did. As for the others, they couldn't interfere at all. Because even though they were at the transcending mortality realm, they couldn't even see the little girl's shadow. Right at this moment, a tiny golden word suddenly appeared between the God Master's brows, Fa. Bang! As soon as the word appeared, an expanse of golden light suddenly erupted from his body. The little girl had returned to Yi Xian's side. At this moment, the God Master's entire body was covered in scars, and there wasn't a single spot that was unharmed. The expressions of the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Even Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were the same. The little girl's strength was too terrifying, and no one here could stop her. The God Master glanced at the scars on his body, and then he shook his head slightly. After that, he looked at Wu Ku, Heavenly King Wu. It's a little hard for me to understand why you would choose to stand on his side. Wu Ku glanced at Yi Xian. You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. The God Master nodded slightly, and he looked at the little girl. The one that I can't understand the most is you. I really can't understand why you would help this person with the calamity body. The experts of the Cosmos Divine Court looked at the little girl. No one had expected the little girl's sudden betrayal. How did Yi Xian do it? He actually made the most terrifying little girl of the Cosmos Divine Court betray them. The little girl looked at the God Master and didn't speak. Yi Xian suddenly said, I told you. Would you believe me? The God Master looked at Yi Xian, tell me. Yi Xian said seriously, actually, I am the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. The little girl beside him nodded cooperatively. The founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Beside Mu Xiaodao, Ma Yi stared at Yi Xian, he's lying again. Mu Xiaodao said softly, what if it's true? Ma Yi turned and looked at Mu Xiaodao, how is that possible? Mu Xiaodao looked at the little girl, she worships the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court like a god and now she is following Yi Xian. Ma Yi looked at Yi Xian in the distance. After a while, she shook her head repeatedly. Impossible. Impossible. From afar, the God Master looked at Yi Xian, and after some time, he said, I don't really believe it. However, it isn't impossible. After all, she actually chose to follow you. As he said that, he turned and looked at the Cosmos Divine Court Hall. Do you dare to test it? Yi Xian frowned. How do I test it? The God Master looked at Yi Xian. Do you see the 12 statues in front of the Cosmos Divine Court Hall? Yi Xian looked at the front of the Cosmos Divine Court Hall. Behind the statue of the Cosmos Divine Court's founder, there were 12 other statues. These 12 statues were holding onto spears, and they were looking at the statue of the Cosmos Divine Court Master. At this moment, the God Master said, these 12 statues are the 12 guardian gods. These 12 guardian gods only listen to the orders of the first God Master. Their souls are in deep slumber, and only the first God Master can wake them up. If you can wake them up, then you will be the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. Hearing this, Yi Xian felt a little awkward. What the F***ck did I call out? At this moment, the little girl suddenly looked at him, and nodded, indicating that he could. Yi Xian was speechless. Little sister, I really can't do it. At this moment, the God Master suddenly said, you don't dare? Yi Xian remained silent. He knew the God Master's evil intentions, but why did the little girl follow him? It was simple, because she thought that he, Yi Xian, was the God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court. If he couldn't wake the 12 guardian gods, the little girl definitely wouldn't follow him. Or perhaps, if he didn't dare to call out, the little girl would suspect him. The current situation was that whoever got the little girl would get to rule the world. The God Master asked again, you don't dare? Yi Xian looked at the God Master, what if I am really the founder of the universe? The God Master looked at Yi Xian, the Cosmos Divine Court will submit to you. Yi Xian remained silent. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. The little girl and Wu Ku were also looking at Yi Xian. Were they really sure that Yi Xian was the master of the Cosmos Divine Court? No. They weren't too sure either. Just based on the carving technique alone, they couldn't confirm that Yi Xian was the master of the Cosmos Divine Court. At this moment, Yi Xian was in a dilemma. If he called out, he had no confidence at all. Master of the Cosmos Divine Court? That was just him making things up. Not calling out? He felt that this little girl might stab his head with a knife. If this little girl stood on the side of the Cosmos Divine Court, they wouldn't have any chance of winning. Moments later, Yi Xian took in a deep breath and walked towards the 12 statues. Damn it, there was no way out. If he tried, he might have a chance of survival. If he didn't try, he wouldn't have any chance at all. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian walked towards the 12 statues. Yi Xian looked at the 12 statues and closed his eyes slowly. At this moment, a gentle breeze blew over. In this breeze, Yi Xian seemed to hear 12 familiar voices. God Master, you are back. Chapter 16:12. Hearing this, Yi Xian shuddered. At this moment, many fragmented memories appeared in his mind. Gradually, Yi Xian became a little absent-minded, as if he had seen his past life. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. Was he the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Actually, the experts of the Cosmos God Court did not believe it. How long had the founder of the Cosmos God Court disappeared? It had been too long. Even if the founder of the Cosmos God Court had reincarnated, he should not be Yi Xian. This was because Yi Xian had the body of disaster. How could a person with the body of disaster be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Tu looked at Yi Xian. No one knew what she was thinking. She vaguely knew what Dao Yi was thinking, but she was not sure. This was because she had been investigating this matter. Again, she wasn't too sure about it. On the other side, Mu Xiaodao was also looking at Yi Xian. Her expression was calmer. Actually, she did not think that Yi Xian was the founder of the Cosmos God Court. This was too ridiculous. However, if Yi Xian was not the founder of the Cosmos God Court, the little girl would not follow him. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was, if this slut was really the founder of the Cosmos God Court, what should they do? No one knew what to do. At this moment, Yi Xian's right hand trembled slightly. At this moment, he saw many scenes. On a small island, a man was leaning against a tree, his head lowered as he read a book. Not far from the man stood a little girl with a dagger in her hand. The little girl was dressed in black and held a dagger in her hand. At this moment, she was waving the dagger in the air. Every time she waved the dagger, a cold light would appear. She was practicing very seriously. Occasionally, she would sneak a glance at the man who was reading under the tree. Every time she looked at the man would look back at her and smile, indicating that she was practicing well. Therefore, the little girl practiced even more seriously. Under the tree, after the man retracted his gaze, he looked at the little girl in the white dress beside him. The little girl in the white dress leaned against his leg. She was also reading a book, and it was the same book as the man. Meanwhile, the little girl in a white dress suddenly said, "There's something off about second brother lately." The man smiled. "What's wrong?" The little girl in the white dress put down the book and turned to look at the man. "She's a little restless." The man rubbed her head gently and was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded from afar. "Dao Yi, you're bad-mouthing me again." Not far away, a little girl in a black dress slowly walked over. The little girl was only 15 or 16 years old, and her hair was very long. Her hair was casually draped behind her, but it was not messy. The little girl was very beautiful. She had sword-like eyebrows and phoenix-like eyes. Her eyes contained a maturity and coldness that did not match her age. Behind the little girl was another little girl in a red dress. The little girl in the red dress was right behind the little girl in the black dress. When she saw the man under the tree, a smile immediately appeared on her face. She wanted to go over, but she seemed to have thought of something. She glanced at the little girl in the black dress in front of her and stopped in her tracks. When the little girl in a black dress walked towards the man, she turned around and glanced at the little girl who was cultivating in the distance. "You're not suited to be an assassin." The little girl looked at the little girl in a black dress, but the little girl in a black dress had already noticed her gaze. The little girl frowned slightly, and then she suddenly vanished. When she appeared again, she was in front of the little girl in a black dress. However, she hadn't even attacked, and the little girl in a black dress's right hand clamped down on her throat. The little girl lifted the little girl up by force, and then she gazed coldly at the little girl. "You won't be a match for me even if you cultivate for another 10,000 years. As she spoke, she was about to toss the little girl aside. However, she seemed to have thought of something and abandoned that thought. She just placed the little girl down and walked towards the man beneath the tree. The little girl gazed at the dagger in her hand with a slight sense of loss. The little girl in a red dress glanced at the little girl in a black dress, but she didn't speak and continued following the little girl in a black dress. The little girl in a black dress walked over to the tree, and then she glanced at Dao Yi with an indifferent expression. Dao Yi, if you're displeased with me, then be frank with me. If it's really not enough, then we can fight. Don't always speak ill of me in front of master. Dao Yi glanced at the little girl in a black dress and didn't speak. The little girl in a black dress glanced coldly at Dao Yi, and then she gazed at the man beneath the tree. The man pointed forward. Sit. The little girl in a black dress obediently sat before the man. The man gazed at the little girl in a red dress and smiled. Empress, you sit as well. The little girl in a red dress hurriedly nodded, and then she sat obediently by the man's side. The man gazed at the little girl in a black dress. Ah Ming, your temper is still so bad. The little girl in a black dress lowered her head slightly. That's me. The man shook his head. You can leave. Ah Ming raised her head and looked at the man. She just stared at the man, and after a while, she stood up and left. But after a few steps, she suddenly stopped and asked, Do you hate me? The man looked at Ah Ming. Do you think that I hate you? Ah Ming nodded. Yes. After that, she quickly disappeared into the distance. Under the tree, the man sighed softly. Dao Yi suddenly said, You shouldn't have indulged her. The man gently stroked Dao Yi's little head, and said softly, All these years, I've been too strict with her. As he spoke, he gazed into the distance, and a trace of worry flashed across his eyes. She's very talented, and she's the most hard-working person among all of you. She can learn everything I teach her in the shortest time possible. She's really outstanding, very, very outstanding, but she's a little extreme, and likes to get into a dead end. Dao Yi wanted to say something, but stopped. The man smiled. I believe in her, just like how I believe in you. Because you're the closest people to me. Dao Yi glanced at the man, nodded slightly, and didn't say anything else. The man looked at the black-clothed little girl holding the dagger, and smiled. Little Mu, don't be discouraged, believe in yourself. The black-clothed little girl called Little Mu lowered her head slightly, and said with some uncertainty, She's very powerful. The man smiled. You can also become very powerful. Little Mu looked at the man. Really? The man nodded. Yes. Little Mu held the dagger tightly in her hand. I will work hard. The man chuckled, and continued reading. On the other side, Ah Ming came to a piece of cloud, and she took out a little wooden figurine. That little wooden figurine looked exactly like her, and as she looked at it, her eyes gradually turned cold. In the next moment, she clenched her right hand, and that little wooden figurine turned into powder. In front of the Cosmos God Court, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and they were a little lost. He knew that those memories just now weren't his. Yi Xian looked at the 12 statues in front of him, and said softly, Wake up. Wake up. A moment of silence ensued, and then the ground suddenly started trembling. Everyone watched as the 12 statues suddenly cracked open, and there were 12 men within them. The 12 men opened their eyes, and when they saw Yi Xian, they knelt down. Greetings, God Lord. Greetings, God Lord. Seeing this, all the experts of the Cosmos God Court were stunned. Ma Yi and Seventh Sword looked at Yi Xian in disbelief, and Ma Yi muttered softly, How is this possible? How is this possible? Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian, and at this moment, there was only one thought in her mind. Did the Cosmos God Court listen to the laws of the universe, or the founder? In the distance, the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court looked at Yi Xian, and he slowly closed his eyes. He had awakened the 12 guardian gods. Without a doubt, Yi Xian's identity was confirmed. He really was the founder of the Cosmos God Court. Then the question was, why did Yi Xian have the body of disaster? How did the founder of the Cosmos God Court become like this? There were too many questions. At this moment, all the experts of the Cosmos God Court were in a daze. If this guy was the founder of the Cosmos God Court, then the question was, should they fight or not? At the side, Yi Xian looked at the 12 guardian gods, and his heart was filled with complicated emotions. Could the mysterious person in my body really be the founder of the Cosmos God Court? I was bragging, and it actually came true. Yi Xian couldn't help but touch his mouth. Was his mouth blessed? At this moment, the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court suddenly looked up into the sky, and he was slightly dazed. Shouldn't the laws of the universe give us an explanation? Explanation? At this moment, a voice sounded from the side. What explanation do you want? Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. Not far away, a woman was slowly walking over. She wore a colorful dress and her hair was tied into a ponytail. Beside her, there was an old man. It was the undying old man. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they saw this woman, including the little girl by Yi Xian's side. The little girl stared at the woman, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Tu's expression also turned solemn. Laws of the universe. However, this wasn't the main body. The woman looked at the current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court and smiled. What explanation do you want? The current God Lord of the Cosmos God Court looked at the woman. He is the founder of the Cosmos God Court. The woman smiled, and? The current God Lord stared at the woman. Why did you kill him? The woman blinked. Is that something you should be asking? The God Lord stared at the woman. We want to know the truth. The woman smiled. Are you loyal to us, or to the founder of the Cosmos God Court? The God Lord looked at the woman. We just want to know the truth. The woman nodded slightly. The truth is, as she spoke, she waved her jade hand. Chi. The God Lord was instantly dismembered into thousands of pieces. Instant kill. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they saw this. Instant kill, a mortal extinguisher realm expert. This was an instant kill. The woman turned and looked at the experts of the Cosmos God Court and smiled. Those who are willing to be loyal to us can stand over here. The experts of the Cosmos God Court exchanged glances with one another. Loyalty to the laws of the universe or the founder of the Cosmos God Court? Without much thought, some of the experts of the Cosmos God Court stood behind the woman. The founder of the Cosmos God Court? That was too far away from them. All along, they had been loyal to the laws of the universe. However, there was one person who didn't go over. Yan Xiaoxiao. Yan Xiaoxiao looked at the woman. I also want to know the truth. The woman smiled. All right, I will tell you. As she spoke, she pointed with her fingers. In the distance, Yan Xiaoxiao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the little girl suddenly appeared in front of her, and the little girl slashed down with her dagger. Chi. The space in front of her was ripped apart, and along with it, a mysterious power was ripped apart. The little girl turned and looked at Yi Xian. Go. Go. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned solemn. Go. The woman turned and looked at Yi Xian, and her lips curled. I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today. At the side, Tu suddenly disappeared. The woman didn't attack, but a black-robed man suddenly blocked in front of Tuesday Hong. Tu was immediately stopped. Suddenly, 36 black-robed men appeared in the surroundings. These 36 people were all peak mortal extinguisher realm experts. The woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Attack. As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 guardians in front of Yi Xian suddenly drew their spears at the same time, and their target was actually Yi Xian. 12 peak mortal extinguisher realm experts. How could Yi Xian block them? P.S. Those who are willing to vote, come over here. Chapter 16:13. No one had expected that the 12 guardians would suddenly attack Yi Xian. After all, it was Yi Xian who had awakened them. Even though no one had expected it, Yi Xian had. At the instant that the 12 of them attacked, he'd already utilized the spacetime shoes to retreat over 1 kilometer away. The 12 of them missed. They were about to attack again when the woman suddenly stopped them. The woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I'm slightly curious. You seem to have known that they would attack you. Yi Xian looked at the woman. If I'm not wrong, then all of you should have eliminated those loyal subordinates of the founder of the Cosmos Court all those years ago. Am I right? The woman smiled. Yes. Yi Xian fell silent. Actually, he'd been on guard against the 12 guardians since the woman appeared. If these 12 people were really loyal to the founder of the Cosmos God Court, the laws of the universe would definitely not allow them to live. There was only one explanation for them being able to live till now. That was because these 12 people were already loyal to the laws of the universe and not the founder of the Cosmos God Court. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian looked at the woman. Which law are you? There was no such woman in his memories. The woman smiled. Why don't you take a guess? Yi Xian was about to speak when the young girl suddenly said, the law of life. The law of life. Yi Xian gazed at the woman. You're the law of life. The woman nodded. Yes. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he asked, why did all of you attack the founder of the Cosmos Court all those years ago? The woman smiled. I don't want to talk so much with you. As she spoke, she suddenly took a step forward and smashed her fist towards Yi Xian. At the instant that the woman attacked, Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were about to attack as well. However, over 10 people blocked their path in the next moment. The young girl was the fastest, and she vanished on the spot at the instant that the woman attacked. A strand of cold light lit up in the distance. Bang! Along with an explosion, the ray of cold light shattered, but in the next moment, countless rays of cold light engulfed the law of life. At this time, Mu Xiaodao's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Let's go. Yi Xian turned to look at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao glared at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian shook his head. He also wanted to leave, but he couldn't. Apart from the invincible law of life, there were also 48 Mortal Terminator stage super experts present. 48. Yi Xian looked at the black-robed men and the 12 protectors, and a sense of helplessness rose in his heart. Not only was their battle prowess suppressed, but they were also outnumbered. How were they supposed to fight? Moreover, even if he could leave, he would not. If he left, what would happen to Tu, Xiaomu, and the ancestors of the Yang tribe? Although the 3 of them were powerful, the other party was ganging up on them. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. Behind him, a sword sheath suddenly appeared. At this time, the 12 protectors suddenly rushed towards him. 12 Mortal Terminator stage experts. All of them had a higher cultivation than him. A trace of hostility flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. He took a step forward, and the next moment, the sword sheath behind him shook violently. The 12 blood-colored longswords shot into the sky. At the same time, the moment the sword sheath was activated, the surrounding space turned into a Jura purgatory. Endless murderous intent, anger, resentment, hostility, malice, and death. Yi Xian took a step forward and pointed his finger forward. Slash. The 12 swords fell straight down. Bang. In the lead. This chapter is not over. Please continue. One of the protectors was killed on the spot by the 12 swords. As for Yi Xian, he also rushed out. However, the moment he rushed out, 10 clones appeared beside him. In fact, he wanted to duplicate Xiaomu and the law of life, but it was impossible. Their strength had already exceeded the scope of the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth. Helpless, he could only duplicate his own. As he rushed towards the 12 protectors, Yi Xian directly activated his crazy demon bloodline. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Bang! One of the protectors was sent flying hundreds of meters away. However, in the next moment, a spear pierced his chest. However, it could not pierce through the god of war armor. Sensing this, Yi Xian was overjoyed. As Wu Ke said, there were really not many who could break through his God of War armor. If he could not break through the God of War armor, was he not invincible? Yi Xian directly rushed towards one of the protectors. At this moment, another spear suddenly stabbed towards him. However, Yi Xian did not dodge and let the spear pierce his chest. Bang! The protector with the spear was directly sent flying hundreds of meters away. After stopping, the protector with the spear looked at his cracked right hand. He was a little dumbfounded. This thing could reflect? In the distance, Yi Xian and his 10 clones were actually suppressing the 10 protectors. Of course, there was still a huge gap between the strength of Yi Xian's clones and those protectors. However, the combat power of his main body was really too terrifying. The main thing was that the God of War armor was terrifying. The God of War armor was useless against Xiao Mu and the Law of Life. However, it was extremely useful against ordinary mortal terminators. These mortal terminators could cause a certain amount of damage to the God of War armor, but the damage was limited. Moreover, the God of War armor had a self-healing ability, and the most terrifying thing was that it had a reflection ability. This reflection ability made those protectors want to fight, but they did not dare to fight. Moreover, there was something even more terrifying. That was Yi Xian's self-healing ability. Although Yi Xian's cultivation level was not as high as theirs, Yi Xian was also at the breaking mortal realm. Especially that healing ability, Yi Xian's immortal bloodline, and Yi Xian's purple qi, 3 kinds of recovery ability. Yi Xian did not defend himself at all. He would risk his life to kill anyone he saw. He could afford it, but those guardians could not. Because of this, Yi Xian and his 10 clones were actually able to fight against 11 mortal terminators. On the other side, Ma Yi, who was next to Mu Xiaodao, suddenly said, "What should we do?" Mu Xiaodao said in a low voice, "Go." Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao. "Go?" Mu Xiaodao nodded. As she spoke, she pulled Lini away. She was most afraid that the protectors behind Ma Yi would let Ma Yi attack. Ma Yi's cultivation level was low, but if Ma Yi activated the power of law, it could break Yi Xian's armor. Only the power of law could break Yi Xian's armor. Once Yi Xian's armor was broken, Yi Xian would definitely not be able to fight against 11 mortal terminators. She could not help Yi Xian because there was a universal law here. The only thing she could do was take Ma Yi away, so that Yi Xian would be less of a threat. However, at this moment, Ma Yi suddenly stopped. She turned to look at Yi Xian in the distance. "Xiaodao, she wants me to activate the power of law." Hearing this, Mu Xiaodao's face instantly darkened. At this moment, Ma Yi opened her palm. Boom! A bolt of divine lightning suddenly fell from the sky. This bolt of divine lightning landed on Ma Yi's palm. In an instant, Ma Yi's entire body was covered in lightning. Waves of powerful aura gushed out of her body, and a bolt of flame lightning condensed in her hand. The power of law. As if sensing something, Yi Xian's face suddenly changed. He turned to look at Ma Yi. At this moment, Ma Yi suddenly spoke softly. "This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Go." As soon as she finished speaking, the bolt of flame lightning in her hand transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot towards Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned. His intuition told him that his armor could not block this thing. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao suddenly stood in front of him. Mu Xiaodao opened her palm, and a flying knife suddenly appeared in her hand. It was the God Slayer that Yi Xian had given her. Mu Xiaodao suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with the knife. The flying dagger contained a mysterious power. The power of law. At this moment, she also activated her power of law. Boom! Mu Xiaodao's saber directly blocked the flaming lightning bolt. However, the flaming lightning bolt did not disappear. In the distance, Ma Yi stared at Mu Xiaodao. "Do you know what you're doing?" Mu Xiaodao grinned. "I'm very clear." Ma Yi roared angrily. You'll die. Mu Xiaodao blinked. I'll block it for a while and then run. At this moment, her body suddenly trembled. In the next moment, the mysterious power in her body started to disappear bit by bit. The power of law of the universe was disappearing. Seeing this scene, Ma Yi shouted in horror, Xiaodao, retreat. Not far away, Yi Xian, who was being held back, also roared. Mu Xiaodao, I can take it myself. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Yi Xian. Take it my ass. This lightning will directly break your armor. Once your armor is broken, you'll be dead. As she spoke, she looked up at the starry sky. After staring at the starry sky for a long time, she softly said, This is my choice. As soon as she finished speaking, the power of law of the universe in her body disappeared. At this moment, her flying knife could no longer block the flame lightning. Boom! Mu Xiaodao was directly forced to retreat by the powerful force. In the process of retreating, Mu Xiaodao suddenly roared angrily. She held the knife with both hands and slashed forward. God slaying. This was a slash that she put her full strength into. The knife fell, boom. The flying knife in Mu Xiaodao's hand directly shattered into pieces. As for the flame lightning, it blasted Mu Xiaodao's body. In an instant, Mu Xiaodao's body directly exploded. Not only did her body explode, but her soul also instantly became illusory. It was as if her soul was completely destroyed. However, the flame lightning was still there. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly roared. Arg! As soon as his voice fell, the mad demon force in his body suddenly erupted. A powerful bloodline force directly forced the protectors around him to retreat. Yi Xian directly rushed in front of Mu Xiaodao's soul. He held the sword with both hands and fiercely slashed at the flame lightning. Boom! With the support of his powerful bloodline power, his sword forcefully blocked that flaming divine lightning. Yi Xian roared angrily. Little soul! Xiao Ta! Save her! The soul-suppressing sword directly appeared above Mu Xiaodao's head. A powerful soul force directly surged towards Mu Xiaodao. Xiao Ta also immediately released countless purple qi that surged towards Xiao Ta. However, Xiao Ta's soul also immediately became more and more transparent. Xiao Ta's voice trembled. Young lord, I can't. That power is too strange. I can't save her. Little soul also said with a trembling voice. Young lord, I can't protect her soul. Yi Xian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Think of a way. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao smiled slightly. There's no need to think of a way. I'm already gone. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian and said softly, Bitch, you gave me a flying knife, I'll return your life. I don't owe you. After saying that, her soul completely disappeared. Her soul was completely destroyed. End of this chapter. Chapter 16-14. Yi Xian's mind went blank when he sensed Priest Knife's soul vanish completely. He's dead? That shameless Mu Xiaodao is dead just like that? Ah! Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously. At this moment, he'd completely entered a berserk state. He held the sword with both hands and slashed wildly. At the same time, the divine god of war armor surged ceaselessly into his body. And the divine god of war intent. Boom! 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 Under Yi Xian's frenzied slashes, the flaming lightning exploded and transformed into countless flaming fragments that scattered everywhere. After he destroyed the flaming lightning, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at the 11 protectors. At this moment, their eyes were filled with fear. Because they realized that Yi Xian was even more terrifying than before. Yi Xian walked over to where Mu Xiaodao had vanished, and then he slowly closed his eyes and spoke in a trembling voice, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have sent you flying knives. I'm sorry. As he spoke, he suddenly turned around and his eyes were bloodshot. Die. As soon as he spoke, he suddenly vanished on the spot. At the moment he charged out, the clones that had been destroyed by the 11 protectors had reappeared. However, it was different this time. The 11 clones had actually entered a berserk state as well. The expressions of the 11 guardians instantly changed greatly when they saw this scene, and they were about to retreat. However, Yi Xian had already charged towards one of the guardians, and then he suddenly slashed down with his sword. At the instant his sword descended, 12 blood swords suddenly slashed out from within the sword case at the same time. At this moment, the 12 blood swords were actually several times stronger than before. Obviously, the 12 blood swords had been affected by the berserk energy. The protector's expression changed drastically. He suddenly stabbed with his spear, and countless rays of light surged out from the tip of his spear. However, the rays of light were instantly obliterated. At the same time, over a dozen rays of light from the swords sliced him into pieces. Instant kill. The remaining 10 protectors' expressions instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Yi Xian's current combat strength was seriously abnormal. A ray of light suddenly erupted from beneath Yi Xian's feet, and then he vanished. Chi! A ray of blood-red light flashed through the battlefield. Yi Xian once again rushed towards the group of guardians in the distance. At this moment, he had completely entered a state of madness. Slaughter. Right now, Yi Xian's mind was only filled with slaughter. Slaughter everything in front of him. When they saw Yi Xian charging towards them, the 10 protectors exchanged glances, and a trace of determination flashed through their eyes. In the next moment, the 10 of them charged towards Yi Xian. They had no other choice. Run? The laws of the universe would not let them go. Moreover, they might not be able to escape because Yi Xian was faster than them. If he fought with his life on the line, there would still be a chance of survival. The 10 of them didn't think about anything else. They just wanted to fight to the death. On the other side, Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were being held back by those black-robed experts. Although the 2 women were powerful, they couldn't care less about Yi Xian at this moment. They couldn't pull themselves away at all. Moreover, they had Yan Xiaoxiao's help. Although Yan Xiaoxiao wasn't very powerful, her support ability was very strong. With her help, Tu and the woman from the Yang clan were holding back most of the black-robed people. Wu Ke wasn't idle either. She was also holding back some experts of the Cosmos Court. On the other side, Ma Yi walked to the place where Mu Xiaodao had disappeared. She looked at the empty space with a dull look in her eyes. "You idiot!" At this moment, 7th Swordsman suddenly walked to her side and said coldly, "She deserves it." Ma Yi suddenly turned to look at 7th Swordsman. "She deserves it." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly rushed towards 7th Swordsman. The 2 women started fighting. On the other side, the most intense battle was between the little girl and the Life Law. The Life Law just stood where she was, and there was a constant flash of cold light around her. They could only see the cold light, but not the person. At this moment, the Life Law suddenly pointed forward with her fingers. This point directly touched a dagger. Boom! The space in front of the Life Law shook violently, and a figure retreated rapidly. It was Xiao Mu. Xiao Mu retreated nearly 100 feet before stopping. At this moment, the Life Law in the distance smiled and said, "Xiao Mu, it's my turn." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared. The moment the Life Law disappeared, Xiao Mu also disappeared. In an instant, Qi! 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 The starry sky within a radius of tens of thousands of miles was directly torn into countless pieces. And the 2 women returned to their original position. At this moment, there was a trace of blood at the corner of Xiao Mu's mouth. As for the Life Law, there was nothing at all. The Life Law smiled. "Xiao Mu, actually, I don't like you stuttering at all. Do you know that?" Xiao Mu wiped the blood at the corner of her mouth. "No, need, the life law shook her head and smiled. You don't need me to like you, right? As she said, she slowly walked towards Xiaomu and smiled. Xiaomu, I really don't understand why Master adopted you back then. Maybe it was because of pity. After all, you were really too pitiful back then. Master only had pity for you, not love. Do you know that? Xiaomu stared at the life law. The dagger in her right hand trembled slightly. The next moment, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. The life law's lips curled up slightly. She suddenly swung to the right. Boom! A cold light suddenly exploded, and a figure retreated hundreds of feet away. It was Xiaomu. The life law turned around and looked at Xiaomu. She smiled. You idiot. Don't you know that an assassin like Dao Yi hates emotional instability the most? Xiaomu stared at the life law. However, the life law ignored her and turned to look at Yi Xian in the distance. At this moment, there were only 5 guardians left after Yi Xian killed. Seeing this, the life law frowned slightly. What a useless thing. As she said, she snapped her fingers. Behind her, the space suddenly split open and a middle-aged man walked out. The life law looked at Yi Xian in the distance. This bloodline is really annoying. Kill him. The middle-aged man nodded and disappeared on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian, who was drawing his sword, suddenly turned around and slashed down. Boom! Yi Xian retreated hundreds of feet. Before he could stop, a fist imprint suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian did not dodge. He allowed the fist imprint to land on his war god armor. Boom! Yi Xian retreated by hundreds of feet again. However, the middle-aged man retreated by thousands of feet. Backlash. There were only 2 people who could ignore Yi Xian's war god armor. They were Xiaomu and the life law. The middle-aged man looked at his body. At this moment, his entire body was cracked and his robe was dyed red with fresh blood. Not far away, the life law frowned. Useless. As she said that, she was about to attack. However, at this moment, Xiaomu suddenly disappeared. The life law's eyes flashed with a trace of viciousness. Scram! As she said that, she suddenly slapped down with her palm. Rumble! The space in front of her was obliterated and a powerful force swept through the starry sky. Everyone in the surroundings was pushed back by this force, and some weaker experts of the Cosmos God Court were even obliterated on the spot. Xiaomu was also sent flying thousands of feet away by the palm. When she stopped, her pupils suddenly shrank because the life law was already charging towards Yi Xian, who was in the distance. Xiaomu roared furiously, "No!" As she spoke, she vanished on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly turned around. At this moment, a woman appeared in front of him. It was the life law. The life law grinned and smashed her fist against Yi Xian's chest. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian was blasted flying. At the instant he flew, the war god armor cracked inch by inch. It wasn't just the war god armor that cracked, Yi Xian's body collapsed as well. When Yi Xian stopped, only his soul remained. The life law was about to attack again when she seemed to have sensed something. She frowned, turned around, and punched again. Bang! A figure was blasted flying. It was Xiaomu who had rushed over. The life law looked coldly at Xiaomu, who was sent flying. Then, she turned to look at Yi Xian, who was left with only his soul. She walked towards Yi Xian. It's time to end this. As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to attack. However, Xiaomu appeared in front of her again, and a cold light slashed towards her throat. The life law pressed her fingers together and caught Xiaomu's dagger. But at the next moment, a cold light suddenly appeared behind her neck. The life law pressed her left hand down lightly. Bang! An invisible force swept out from within her, and Xiao Mu was blasted back once more. The Life Law glanced coldly at Xiao Mu. Xiao Mu, you should be glad that I'm only a clone. If I was my main body, you wouldn't even have the chance to attack. As she spoke, she walked towards Yi Xian. At this moment, little Mu rushed in front of her again. In an instant, she was drowned in countless cold lights. Hiss! 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 That expanse of space was instantly torn into pieces. However, the Life Law was still standing there intact when the cold lights vanished. The Life Law suddenly charged forward. Xiao Mu's pupils constricted, and then she suddenly vanished. At the instant that she vanished, the Life Law slammed her fist towards the right. Bang! That single punch caused a dent to appear in that expanse of space. At the same time, Xiao Mu was blasted flying again. However, she vanished the moment she was blasted flying. In the distance, the Life Law suddenly moved to the side, and a dagger slashed down towards her nose as soon as she did. That slash missed. The Life Law raised her leg and gave a side kick before the dagger could even descend. Bang! That kick shattered the expanse of space, and Xiao Mu was blasted flying again. At the instant that she was blasted flying, the Life Law took a step forward, raised her right hand, and pushed her elbow forward. Bang! Xiao Mu was instantly blasted almost 30 kilometers away. The Life Law did not continue attacking. Instead, she turned to look at Yi Xian. Master, this time, it's time to bid farewell. As she spoke, she suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, raised her right hand, and elbowed him again. Bang! A loud explosion was heard, and a figure was pushed back. It was not Yi Xian who was pushed back, but the Life Law. A woman stood in front of Yi Xian. The woman looked at the Life Law, and in the next moment, she suddenly appeared in front of her. The Life Law threw a punch, but the punch did not hit the woman. The Life Law's vision blurred, and in the next moment, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Bang! The Law of Life immediately retreated, and the instant she retreated, she felt her right hand being grabbed. The Law of Life's expression instantly changed, and she wanted to retaliate with her left hand, but a hand directly grabbed her by the throat, and then, she was smashed to the ground. Bang! The Life Law's head crashed into the expanse of space, and almost at the same time, the woman's knee struck her abdomen. Bang! The Life Law was blasted thousands of meters away. P.S. I've been really busy lately. It's not an excuse, I'm sorry. The updates aren't that great. When everyone scolds me, as long as they don't call me ugly, I can tolerate it. Chapter 16:15. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on the woman who had just appeared. Nearby, Tu glanced at the woman, and his expression relaxed slightly. He naturally knew who this woman was. The woman wore a white robe and had her hair tied up in a ponytail. Yi Xian also knew this woman. She was the woman who had been following the green-robed man. At this moment, the Life Law in the distance suddenly laughed. Martial Dao Transcendent. Interesting. Martial Dao Transcendent. What was Martial Dao Transcendent? Above Mortal Destroyer was Peri-Celestial, and above Peri-Celestial was Transcendent. Since ancient times, there had been very few Martial Dao Transcendent. The woman ignored Life Law and turned to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian only had his soul left. If it weren't for the soul-suppressing sword and Xiao Ta, his soul would have been obliterated just now. In his current state, he couldn't withstand a full blow from a powerhouse like Life Law. The woman withdrew her gaze and looked at the distant Life Law. The Life Law smiled. Powerhouses like you are rarely seen among humans. Even among those we nurtured, there are almost none like you. The woman slowly walked toward Life Law. Life Law looked at the woman and slowly clenched her right hand. A moment later, she suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distance, the woman raised her right hand to block. Boom! The space behind the woman cracked, but she was completely unharmed. With her attack blocked, Life Law suddenly lifted her right leg and swept it at the woman's head. However, the woman was even faster. After blocking Life Law's attack, she took advantage of the momentum and punched forward. When Life Law's leg was a few inches away from the woman's head, she was sent flying. The moment she was sent flying, the woman suddenly took a step forward, and then with lightning speed, she struck her knee at Life Law. Life Law's expression changed drastically, and she raised both hands to block in front of her. Bang! As everyone watched, Life Law instantly retreated thousands of meters away. Wherever she passed, space was directly torn apart and annihilated. The law of life hadn't even stopped when the woman appeared in front of her again. The law of life's pupils constricted, and she immediately threw a punch. However, she was in the process of retreating, and she had thrown this punch in a panic, so the strength and speed of this punch had been reduced by at least half. Sure enough, the moment the law of life punched out, the woman's fist had already struck her throat. Boom! The law of life instantly retreated 100,000 feet, and the space within that 100,000 feet turned into a huge, pitch-black abyss. The power of the woman's punch forcibly erased this space. However, the law of life forcibly withstood the power of this punch. After stopping, the law of life licked the blood from the corner of its mouth, then looked at the woman in the distance with a smile, and said, "It's been many years since I've been injured. Even though it's just a clone." As she spoke, she pointed her right hand towards the woman in the distance, and in the next moment, she suddenly clenched her fist. Boom! The area where the woman stood collapsed and was annihilated. However, the woman was completely fine. The law of life narrowed his eyes, and at this moment, the woman suddenly appeared in front of him. The law of life slowly closed his eyes and suddenly moved sideways, directly dodging the fatal punch. At the same time, the law of life's right hand suddenly stabbed towards the woman's throat. However, the law of life's finger stopped half an inch away from the woman's throat, because the woman's attack was even faster and directly punched the law of life's abdomen. Bang! The law of life was instantly pushed back explosively. The woman didn't stop there. She pressed forward, grabbed the law of life's right hand that hadn't been withdrawn, and then pulled it towards herself. At the same time, the woman's knee struck the law of life's abdomen. Bang! The law of life was instantly pushed over 10 kilometers back. The law of life had just stopped when the woman's fist suddenly smashed towards her. The law of life's pupils constricted. At this moment, she could only defend herself because she wasn't as fast as the woman when it came to attacking. The law of life's arms protected her head. However, the woman suddenly withdrew her hand at this moment, and then she raised her leg and smashed it down. Bang! The law of life instantly fell. The law of life had just stopped when the woman appeared in front of her once more. The law of life instinctively smashed her fist forward, but the woman's hand had clamped down on her throat at the instant that she punched, and then the woman lifted her up by force. The law of life gazed at the woman and grinned, "You can't kill me." The woman suddenly clenched her right fist. Bang! A powerful force enveloped the law of life, but the law of life's body merely became slightly illusory. The woman's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene, and then she smashed her fist towards the law of life's face. Bang! The law of life was blasted 3 kilometers back. After the law of life's attack stopped, her body became slightly illusory again. However, she wasn't dead. The law of life gazed at the woman and smiled, "How can a mortal kill a god? Even if it's just a clone." "A god?" The woman shook her head and chuckled, "We're not familiar with each other. Don't joke around." The corners of the law of life's mouth curled up slightly. "I admit that I'm inferior to you in terms of the martial Tao. However, can you kill me?" Meanwhile, little Twilight suddenly appeared in front of the woman, and she passed the dagger in her hand to the woman. Kill a god. It was given to her by the former master of the Cosmos God Court, and it could even kill the laws of the universe. The smile on the Law of Life's face froze when she saw this scene. Little Twilight couldn't kill her with that dagger because she wasn't strong enough. However, if the woman used it, then her clone would definitely be unable to stop it. However, the woman shook her head, there's no need. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a spear suddenly appeared in her grasp. At the instant she held the spear, the woman's aura instantly changed. The woman gazed at the Law of Life in the distance, and then she suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distance, the pupils of the Law of Life constricted abruptly, and then she suddenly smashed her fist forward. A powerful force swept out like a volcanic eruption, and the space around her was obliterated inch by inch. Meanwhile, a spear stabbed over. The spear pierced through the Law of Life's fist like a hot knife through butter. It stopped for a moment, and then the spear suddenly pierced through the Law of Life's fist before moving along her arm and into her body. Bang! The Law of Life was blasted 30 kilometers back. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. The woman gazed at the Law of Life, and the Law of Life stared blankly at her own body. At this moment, a mysterious force was destroying her, and even if she was the Law of Life, she wasn't able to resist that force. She could only watch as her body gradually vanished. The Law of Life raised her head and gazed at the woman. You aren't just a god in the martial Tao. The woman didn't speak. She just turned around and gazed at the experts of the Cosmos God Court. At this moment, all of them had stopped. Their eyes were filled with fear as they gazed at the woman who stood before them. She was someone who could even kill a clone of the Law of Universe. The woman didn't attack them as well. She just walked over to Yi Xian and gazed at Yi Xian, who only had his soul left. She spoke softly, "They're too much of a bully." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her right hand, and the spear that was stabbed into the Law of Life's body suddenly flew out and returned to her grasp. In the next moment, she suddenly turned around and tossed it. Hiss! The spear stabbed into the center of the Law of Life's forehead. Bang! The Law of Life instantly retreated over 100 kilometers away. At this moment, her lower body had become completely illusory, and only her head remained. The Law of Life stared at the woman. "You've made me very angry." As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished on the spot. But in the next moment, an extremely terrifying force suddenly swept over from the depths of the starry sky above them. Along with the appearance of this terrifying force, the entire starry sky had become illusory. No, the entire stellar region of the Cosmos God Court had become illusory. The expressions of everyone here changed upon witnessing this scene. Meanwhile, Little Mu appeared by the woman's side, and she raised her head and gazed towards the depths of the starry sky. Her original body is coming. The Law of the Universe's body. Little Mu gazed at Yi Xian. "Let's go. Let's go." No one here could stop the descent of the Law of the Universe's body. Not even the woman who just appeared. Yi Xian shook his head. "Go? Where can we go?" Yi Xian gazed at the spot where Mu Xiaodao had vanished, and then he slowly closed his eyes while his heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. He hadn't expected that Mu Xiaodao would help him block the energy of the law. He really hadn't expected that. If he knew Mu Xiaodao's character was like this, then he wouldn't have sent her flying knives no matter what. "I'm the one who caused her death." Meanwhile, the woman suddenly gazed at Tu. "Take him away." Tu spoke in a low voice. "Even you can't stop it?" The woman shook her head. "Besides the three of them, no one else can stop the law's body. I can only delay her. Take him to his father." Tu frowned slightly. "Where's that fellow now? Why hasn't he come himself?" The woman shook her head. "Don't blame him. He really can't escape now." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "He's more complicated than we expected." Tu spoke in a low voice. "He was a little abnormal just now." Under normal circumstances, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to awaken the 12 guardian gods, but Yi Xian had awakened them. This made her a little worried. The woman nodded. "I know. That's why I rushed here." As she spoke, she suddenly raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. She's coming. Take him away, I'll stop her. Tu nodded and was about to take Yi Xian away, but at this moment, a woman suddenly stepped out from the depths of the starry sky. It was the Law of Life. But this time, it wasn't a doppelganger, but her main body. The Law of Life looked at the woman below, and the corners of her mouth curled up. Leave? Woman, do you think you can leave? As she spoke, her smile gradually turned cold. Today, none of you can leave. Don't worry, I won't kill you right away. I'll let you taste all the torture in this world. As she spoke, she was about to attack, but at this moment, in the distant starry sky, the space there suddenly split open, and the next moment, a woman slowly walked out. When they saw this woman, everyone was stunned. The woman wore a plain dress and held a long sword. The plain dress woman. The plain dress woman looked at the Law of Life, and she slowly walked toward her with an indifferent expression. Who gave you the courage to show yourself? Seeing the plain dress woman, the smile on the Law of Life's face gradually disappeared. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said softly, my physical body is gone. The plain dress woman stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. When she saw that Yi Xian was only left with his soul, she was stunned at first, but the next moment, her expression instantly became ferocious. Who is it? She suddenly unsheathed the walking sword in her hand. Wang! A sword hum suddenly reverberated through the entire Cosmos God Court star field. In the next moment, the entire Cosmos God Court star field collapsed inch by inch. It wasn't just the Cosmos God Court star field, even the surrounding star fields of the Cosmos God Court star field collapsed. This sword could destroy the entire universe. Below, countless sword chi rampaged, and the Cosmos God Court experts died on the spot, including the Mortal Extinguisher realm experts. The expression of the spear-wielding woman, too, and the rest instantly changed drastically, because the sword chi attacked indiscriminately. The spear-wielding woman immediately took a step forward, and stabbed out with her spear. However, the moment the spear stabbed out, the spear directly shattered. The spear-wielding woman's pupils constricted, and she took another step forward. A mysterious power directly enveloped the sword chi in front of her. Wushan domain. However, the Wushan domain didn't even last a breath of time before it shattered. In the next moment, countless sword chi slashed towards the spear-wielding woman and the rest. Chapter 16:16. A sense of helplessness rose in the spear-wielding woman's heart when she saw the sword energy slashing toward her. She couldn't stop this woman's sword energy. She realized that the woman was even stronger than before. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of the spear-wielding woman. The sword energy of the plainly dressed woman stopped half an inch away from Yi Xian's forehead. Yi Xian and the others heaved sighs of relief when they saw this. That sword energy really couldn't be stopped. In truth, Yi Xian was afraid as well. Not to mention the fact that he was only a soul body, even his main body and war god armor couldn't stop Qing, or sword energy. This was the sword energy Qing had unleashed in a fit of rage. How many people in the world could stop it? Meanwhile, the woman in a plain dress suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She waved her hand, and the sword chi in the surroundings instantly vanished. Along with the disappearance of the sword chi, the experts from countless stellar regions heaved sighs of relief at this moment. The woman's attack just now hadn't just targeted the Divine Palace stellar field, but all the worlds. If the sword energy hadn't vanished, it would only be a matter of time before the entire universe disappeared. Tu glared at the woman and said angrily, "Are you crazy? Don't you differentiate between friend and foe?" She'd almost been killed by this woman just now. The woman glanced coldly at Tuesday. Instead of cultivating the sword, you went and cultivated the fist. Look at yourself now. Do you know how weak you are? Tu fell silent. In truth, she regretted it too. If she'd known her brother was still alive, she wouldn't have wasted her time even if you beat her to death. She'd wasted hundreds of thousands of years. If she hadn't been so disheartened and wasted her time, she wouldn't have been any weaker than martial god and Lan. The woman ignored Tu and turned to look at Yi Xian, her expression cold. Who is it? Yi Xian pointed at the law of life in the distance. It's her. She's the one who bullied me. The woman looked up at the law of life, whose eyes were filled with solemnity. She naturally knew about this woman. She was the one who defied many laws, including the law of life. So, she was fearful of this woman in a plain dress. Moreover, their second sister had given them strict orders that they couldn't appear in the world with their real bodies, and they couldn't fight this woman head-on. And the reason why she appeared in her original form was because she was too angry just now. She, a dignified law of life, was actually beaten up by a mortal. How could this be tolerated? Of course she couldn't tolerate it, but she didn't expect that the woman would appear as soon as she appeared. It was obvious that this woman had been paying attention to them. At that moment, the woman in the plain dress slowly walked toward the law of life. The law of life collected his thoughts and said with a smile, "Second sister said that I can't fight you head-on, but I'm a little unconvinced. Come, let me see just how strong you are." As she spoke, she slowly clenched her right hand, and a powerful force condensed in her palm. As this force condensed, the surrounding starry sky started to seethe. The plainly dressed woman looked at the life laws, a trace of disdain on her face. "You think you're worthy?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly unsheathed the walking Dao sword in her hand. Chi! The walking sword pierced right through the law of life's forehead. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Even the law of life herself was stunned. At the instant that the plainly dressed woman drew her sword, the law of life was ready to attack. But at the instant that she was about to attack, the sword had pierced through the center of her forehead. I didn't even have the chance to attack. The law of life's mind went blank. Yi Xian was slightly stunned as well. Is Qing that terrifying? She instantly annihilated a law of the universe with a single strike of her sword? That's an instant annihilation. He'd been looking forward to the battle between Qing and the universe divine court so that he could learn from it. However, he hadn't expected that the battle would end as soon as Qing attacked. Actually, the law of life was the most stunned. As far as she was concerned, even if she couldn't defeat the woman in a plain dress, she wouldn't be much weaker than her. However, she hadn't expected that the gap between her and this swordsman wasn't just a little bit. And Lanjing glanced at the woman, and there was a trace of a complicated expression in her eyes. It's still that invincible Tian Ming. Meanwhile, the woman had walked over to the law of life, and she gazed at her. See how strong I am? Are you worthy? Are you worthy? Everyone looked at the woman as if they were looking at a monster. That was the law of life. However, she couldn't even take a single strike from this woman. No, she didn't even have the chance to attack before this woman. Just how terrifying was this woman? The law of life stared at the woman in a plain dress. Within her body, a steady stream of life force was sustaining her life, but it was useless. Even if she was the law of life and controlled the power of life, she couldn't repair the injuries in her body. The damage caused by the woman's sword was not something that any law could repair, including the law of life. The woman looked at the law of life. Call for help. Call for help. The crowd was speechless. The woman said again, call those trashy laws of the universe over. The law of life looked at the woman in a plain dress with an extremely ugly expression. In fact, there was a trace of fear in her heart. In her entire life, she had only been afraid of 3 people. The first was her master. The founder of the universe divine court, God Yi. She was both respectful and fearful of God Yi. The second was her second sister. The person in front of her was the 4th person she was afraid of. The woman looked at the law of life. Not going to call for help? The law of life looked up into the depths of the starry sky, but there was nothing there. Seeing that, the law of life suddenly smiled. She knew that she had been abandoned. The swordsman in front of her was a powerhouse at the same level as her master. He was not someone she could fight alone. She would definitely die. The law of life suddenly looked at Yi Xian below and smiled. Do you want to know why we wanted to kill you back then? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't want to know. You're the law of life. Can you bring Xiao Dao back to life? The reason he asked that was because he saw the undying old man. The undying old man must have been saved by the law of life. Since the other party could save the undying old man, he might be able to save Mu Xiaodao. The law of life looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I can. Yi Xian walked in front of the law of life. Save her. The law of life smiled. Beg me. Yi Xian nodded. I'm begging you. The smile on the law of life's face gradually disappeared. She looked at Yi Xian for a long time and said softly, Do you still remember me? That person you never really cared about. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, the scene from back then appeared in his mind again. It was still under that tree. Under the tree, the man was reading with great interest and would smile from time to time. Beside him was still Dao Yi. Dao Yi was looking at the man's feet, holding a book and reading it attentively. Little Mu was still cultivating at the side, very seriously cultivating. In fact, there was also a little girl. The little girl wore a colorful dress and had 2 ponytails. She was very cute. The little girl was sitting on a small rock not far away from the tree. She played with the rock alone and would occasionally look at the man under the tree. The man's gaze was either on Dao Yi or Little Mu. Seeing this scene, the little girl's expression became gloomy. After a long time, the little girl suddenly gathered her courage and ran to the man under the tree with a few rocks. The little girl looked at the man and said nervously, Master. Master. Let's play together, okay? The man smiled. I want to read with Dao Yi. Go and play. The little girl looked at Dao Yi and slightly lowered her head. She wanted to say something, but she did not have the courage to. After a moment of silence, the little girl turned around and left. The rocks in her hand fell to the ground. Hearing the sound of the rocks falling, the man looked up at the little girl. He hesitated and was about to stop the little girl when Dao Yi suddenly said, Master, what do you think this passage means? The man looked at the passage that Dao Yi was pointing at and was a little surprised. Didn't I tell you before? Dao Yi blinked and smiled playfully. I want to hear it again, Master. The man smiled and told it again. When he finished, he looked up into the distance and the little girl was already gone. Dao Yi continued to read, very seriously. After a moment of silence, he looked at the small rocks on the ground and was thinking about something. The scene stopped. In reality, in front of the life law, Yi Xian opened his eyes and opened his palm. In his hand, there were 6 or 7 small rocks. Yi Xian was a little confused. He did not know where these rocks came from. The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian and was thinking about something. The law of life was slightly taken aback at first when she saw these small stones. In the next moment, she suddenly started laughing, and then she started crying again. The life law suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian and hugged Yi Xian. She pressed her head tightly against Yi Xian's chest and closed her eyes. She said softly, Master. The most obedient one is not necessarily the good one. You must be careful. Before she could finish her words, her voice suddenly came to an abrupt halt. She was completely breathless. Her body gradually became illusory. Beside Yi Xian, the plainly dressed woman suddenly turned her head, her expression icy cold. You want to kill someone in front of me? As soon as she finished speaking, the walking sword in her hand suddenly flew out. Chi! The sword pierced through the air and traveled millions of miles. Boom! At the end of the distant starry sky, a star field was directly turned into nothingness, forcefully erased by this sword. However, the woman in the plain dress frowned. That sword didn't kill him. The other party had escaped. This was the first time someone had escaped from her sword. The plain-dressed woman opened her palm and the walking Dao sword returned to her hand. There was a drop of blood on the sword. Looking at that drop of blood, the woman in the plain dress had a cold expression. No one knew what she was thinking. Meanwhile, the life laws in Yi Xian's arms had vanished completely, but there was a tiny wooden figure in his hand. This was what the law of life had placed in his hand just now. The little wooden doll looked exactly the same as the law of life. Clearly, the law of life had been preserved until now. Looking at this little wooden figure, Yi Xian fell silent. P.S. Please give me a ticket. Thank you everyone. Chapter 16-17. At this moment, countless starlight spots gathered behind Yi Xian. Soon, these starlight spots condensed into a soul. Mu Xiaodao. Yi Xian turned around. When he saw Mu Xiaodao's soul, he heaved a sigh of relief. The law of life had saved Mu Xiaodao. Yi Xian glanced at the little wooden man in his hand and put it away. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao looked around blankly. Not dead? Yi Xian smiled. Surprised? Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. The law of life saved me? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Xiaodao frowned. You won against the law of life? Yi Xian smiled. Let me introduce you to someone. With that, he walked over to the plain-dressed woman and smiled. This is Qing, my sister. Mu Xiaodao looked at the plain-dressed woman. When she saw her, her expression turned solemn. Mu Xiaodao nodded. Hello, boss. Boss. The plain-dressed woman sized up Mu Xiaodao and nodded. She did not say anything. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. I'm leaving. Yi Xian frowned. Where are we going? Mu Xiaodao said, going back. Yi Xian shook his head. If you go back, you'll definitely die. Mu Xiaodao smiled. I won't. Yi Xian wanted to say something, but Mu Xiaodao said, B*TCH, I'm just telling you. I don't need your consent. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't mean anything else. It's just that you helped me before. If you go back now, Mu Xiaodao smiled. I know what you mean. However, I still have to go back. The plain-dressed woman suddenly said, I'll go back with you. Yi Xian was speechless. Mu Xiaodao hurriedly shook his head. Boss, I know you want to kill the law of the universe. However, even if I go back, I won't be able to see them. They have never appeared in front of us. The woman in the plain dress nodded slightly, I know. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Yi Xian, then looked at Lini and seventh swordsman in the distance. At this moment, the two women were no longer fighting. Mu Xiaodao said, let's go. With that, she turned around and left. Lini hurried to follow. Seventh swordsman hesitated for a moment, then hurried to follow as well. In the distance, Ma Yi suddenly said, that woman killed the law of life in one slash. One strike. The law of life didn't even have the chance to attack. It's too scary. Mu Xiaodao said softly, behind that bitch, there are two people as powerful as that big shot. Lini said in a low voice, two? Mu Xiaodao nodded. Ma Yi sighed helplessly. Just one girl in a simple dress was already so terrifying. If two more came, what was there left to play? Mu Xiaodao glanced at seventh swordsman. Seventh swordsman, you're also a swordsman. Do you feel inferior after seeing that big boss? Low self-esteem? The seventh swordsman did feel inferior. That girl's sword was so powerful that it made people despair, and they had no desire to chase after it. The law of the universe, which was like a god in their hearts, couldn't even take a single strike from that woman. It was too scary. At this moment, Ma Yi suddenly looked at Mu Xiaodao. Xiaodao, are you sure you want to go back? Mu Xiaodao said softly, do I look like I'm joking? Ma Yi hesitated, then said, if you go back, you might not be able to come back. Mu Xiaodao smiled. No matter what, she made me who I am. I can't betray her just like that. Ma Yi glanced at Mu Xiaodao and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She knew Mu Xiaodao's temper. Once she decided on something, no one could change her mind. Soon, the three girls disappeared at the end of the distant starry sky. Yi Xian looked at Mu Xiaodao's departing figure and sighed in his heart. He really wanted to make Xiaodao stay, but he knew that he couldn't. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. He couldn't stay. Yi Xian shook his head and withdrew his thoughts. He looked at the girl in the simple dress. Qing, why are you here? He was also surprised by the sudden appearance of the girl in the simple dress. She said, I sensed their true bodies, so I came. Yi Xian asked, can you sense other universal laws? She shook her head. Yi Xian frowned. Even you can't? She nodded. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment. He looked at Xiao Mu. Xiao Mu, do you know where the universal laws are? Xiao Mu shook her head. I don't know, even Xiao Mu didn't know. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. He seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the girl in the simple dress. Qing, the life law suddenly disappeared. Did someone attack her? She nodded. The other party ran very fast. Yi Xian_'s face turned serious when he heard that. Someone who was able to escape from Qing's sword was more than terrifying. She said again. She seemed to want to say something to you, but someone doesn't want you to know. Yi Xian nodded. The life law told him to be careful when it disappeared. What should he be careful of? At this moment, the girl in the simple dress suddenly turned to look at the Yang clan woman. The two women stared at each other. The atmosphere was tense. Seeing this, Yi Xian was a little dumbfounded. Did they have a grudge against each other? Yi Xian quickly stood in front of the two women. Yi Xian looked at the girl in the simple dress. He said softly, Ancestor helped me just now. That's why I can hold on until now. She nodded. I won't kill her. Yi Xian was speechless. The Yang clan woman looked at the girl in the simple dress. She didn't say anything. Because she knew that she didn't have the ability to take revenge on the girl in the simple dress. It was stupid for the weak to say anything to the strong. Yi Xian said. Qing, what do you plan to do next? She said, I'm going to look for that person from before. Yi Xian asked. The person who attacked just now? She nodded. Besides that person, there are some laws of the universe. As she spoke, she glanced at the starry sky. They rely on the entire universe. So long as the entire universe is destroyed, then they'll naturally reveal themselves. The expressions of everyone here changed when they heard this. Yi Xian was slightly embarrassed as well. Qing, that's a very dangerous thought. He knew that Qing, definitely possessed the ability to destroy the universe. If she hadn't stopped just now, then this universe would have really been destroyed. Meanwhile, she gazed at Yi Xian. This universe exists as long as you're alive. Yi Xian was speechless. Everyone here was speechless. However, they knew that she wasn't lying. If it wasn't for Yi Xian, then it really wouldn't be difficult for her to destroy the laws of the universe. Hide. I'll destroy the entire universe for you. Where are you going to hide? In this vast universe, apart from Yi Xian, the woman in the plain dress did not care about anyone else. The reason this universe still existed was merely because she loved the house and its crows. Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, Qing, can you help me with something? She nodded, speak. Yi Xian glanced at Wu Ku and said, a marriage proposal. A marriage proposal. Wu Ku was stunned, and then a trace of warmth flowed through his heart. She knew that Yi Xian wanted to help her. She nodded slightly, all right. Meanwhile, Enrich suddenly said, little fellow, it's time for me to go as well. Yi Xian gazed at her, what's your name? Enrich replied, Anton. Yi Xian bowed respectfully, thank you, Anton. Enrich smiled, your father didn't come this time because he encountered some matters and was truly unable to leave. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Let me do it. Yi Xian nodded, I don't blame him. Enrich nodded slightly, take care. Yi Xian bowed again, take care, Anton. Enrich glanced at her before turning around and vanishing into the horizon. Tu looked at Yi Xian, I'm leaving as well. Yi Xian asked, where to? Tu replied, cultivate. Don't worry, I'll definitely be there if you're in danger. As she spoke, she glanced at the woman in a plain dress before turning around and vanishing into a ray of light. After Tu vanished, Yi Xian looked at Yan Xiaoxiao who was nearby. Yan Xiaoxiao Dao said, now it seems like the laws of the universe were created by you. However, they betrayed you. Moreover, they've taken control of the entire Cosmos Court. Yi Xian shook his head, I don't want to care about these things. Yan Xiaoxiao shook her head, you can't escape. Yi Xian went silent, he really couldn't escape. Yan Xiaoxiao continued, previously, there were tens of mortal extinguisher realm super experts. If I'm not wrong, these people should be secretly nurtured by the laws of the universe. Those people just now might be a part of them. As she said this, she looked at the woman in a plain dress, of course, if this lady keeps following you, you don't need to worry about these problems. Yi Xian glanced at the woman in a plain dress. It was obvious that Qing wouldn't keep following him. Qing appeared this time because of the appearance of the laws of the universe. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come. Many things had to be faced by oneself. Yi Xian looked at Yan Xiaoxiao, lady, are you interested in investigating with me? Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, yes. Yi Xian said, is there anyone left in the Cosmos Court? Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, there are people down there, but I don't know if they will recognize you. Yi Xian thought about it, those who are willing to recognize me can go to the Undying Emperor clan in the 9 dimensions. Those who are not willing, I won't force them. Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, I'll contact them. After saying that, she paused for a moment before continuing, previously, the Cosmos God Court maintained the peace of the entire universe. Now, most of the experts in the Cosmos God Court are dead. There might be chaos in many places. You have to consider this matter. Yi Xian said, wait for me to come back and deal with it. As he said this, he looked at Wu Ku, little Ku, let's go. Wu Ku nodded. Soon, the three disappeared into the distance. Yan Xiaoxiao looked at the depths of space and sighed softly. She really didn't expect things to develop to this point. At this moment, a lady appeared behind Yan Xiaoxiao. It was the educated youth in charge of the intelligence system of the Cosmos Court. Yan Xiaoxiao said softly, what do you think? The educated youth shook her head, I don't know. It's very chaotic now. Yan Xiaoxiao looked at the educated youth. Do you know what happened in the Cosmos Court? At the very beginning. Yan Xiaoxiao shook her head, the history of the founder of the Cosmos Court has been erased. Erased. Yan Xiaoxiao said softly, it seems like things are more complicated than we thought. At the end of the distant space. Yi Xian looked at Wu Ku, little Ku, your Wu clan is forcing you to marry with that Southly clan? Wu Ku nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly, he looked at the plain-dressed lady, he hesitated, Qing, I'll say this first, you can kill people, but you can't kill indiscriminately. He realized that when Qing, was angry, she would even kill her own people. This wasn't good. The plain-dressed lady nodded, I'll try my best. Yi Xian's expression froze, he was a little flustered, he was going to propose marriage, not to exterminate the clan. Wuku was also a little flustered. Was it really good to bring this big shot to the Wu clan? She was starting to worry about the Wu clan. P.S. I'm too late today. I'm a little flustered now. End of this chapter. Chapter 16-18. Somewhere in the starry sky, a woman stood quietly. Behind her was a giant demonic dragon. It was Emo Xiaoshuang. At this moment, Emo Xiaoshuang was looking at a scroll in her hand. After a long time, she withdrew her gaze and said softly, Cosmos Court. At this moment, an old man by her side spoke solemnly, the Cosmos Court is finished. Emo Xiaoshuang shook her head, no. The Cosmos Court has become even more terrifying. The old man frowned, what do you mean? Emo Xiaoshuang said softly, because the laws of the universe have appeared. Moreover, based on the experts they called out earlier, the laws of the universe have definitely nurtured a group of extraordinary experts. The current Cosmos Court is even more terrifying than before. Because it's unknown. We don't know anything about them. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, they have an even stronger enemy now. Emo Xiaoshuang smiled, Yi Xian? The old man nodded. Emo Xiaoshuang said softly, he might really be the reincarnation of the founder of the Cosmos Court. The old man nodded, it's very likely. Emo Xiaoshuang fell silent for a long time before she said softly, we have to join forces with him. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, young miss, are we really going to fight the laws of the universe to the death? Emo Xiaoshuang was expressionless. How can we not take revenge for the Demon Dao clan? The old man sighed in his heart. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. Beside him were Wu Ku and the woman in a plain dress. All along the way, Wu Ku looked curiously at the woman. She was extremely curious about her. She actually killed an existence of the laws of the universe. She even killed him in an instant. That wasn't just an ordinary level of terror. Wu Ku hesitated for a moment before she said, Senior, how strong are you? How strong? Yi Xian looked at the woman when he heard this. Actually, he wanted to know exactly how strong Qing was as well. The woman's expression was calm, I don't know. I don't know. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled because he knew what Qing meant. Wu Ku didn't know, so she frowned, you don't know. She glanced at Wu Ku, how would I know without an opponent? Without an opponent. Wu Ku's expression froze. The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian. She sized up Yi Xian and nodded slightly. You're not as weak as before. As she said that, she seemed to feel that this might be a blow to Yi Xian, so she added, what I mean is, you are also very strong. Yi Xian was speechless. Wu Ku suddenly said, Senior, can you give me some pointers? She knew that if she could receive guidance from this woman, she would benefit from it for the rest of her life. This was an invincible existence. The plainly dressed woman shook her head, no. Wu Ku felt a little awkward. She realized that this senior was not easy to talk to. The woman in the plain dress said again, we're not on the same path, so I can't give you any pointers. Wu Ku was a little puzzled. Not the same people? Aren't they all cultivators? The woman in the plain dress looked at Wu Ku. You are a cultivator, but I am not. Wu Ku still did not understand. Then Senior, you are? The woman said, why do you have so many questions? Wu Ku was speechless. Seeing that Wu Ku was a little embarrassed, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Qing what level are you at? The woman in the plain dress said, I don't know. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Yi Xian was a little curious and was about to ask, but at this time, the woman in the plain dress took the initiative to say, there is no level that can measure me. Wu Ku's expression suddenly became a little strange. Yi Xian asked again, you surpassed your level? The woman in the plain dress shook her head. Not surpassed. Saying too much is too complicated. Let me put it simply. I am invincible. That's it. Yi Xian's expression also froze, and Wu Ku was also dumbfounded. Invincible. Wu Ku hesitated for a moment, then said, Senior, I heard my ancestors say that no one in this world can be invincible. In this vast universe, there is no strongest, only stronger. The woman in the plain dress glanced at Wu Ku. I envy your ancestor. Wu Ku was a little puzzled. Why? The woman in the plain dress said indifferently, the reason why he said that was because he was still very weak, and he knew that there was someone stronger than him. But I... As she said that, she looked at Wu Ku. No one is stronger than me, I am invincible. Wu Ku was speechless. Yi Xian said, Qing'er, you have experienced the vast universe, have you never met a worthy opponent? The woman in the plain dress said, Your father and that swordsman count. Yi Xian blinked. You or them, who is stronger? The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian. Do you want to hear the truth? Yi Xian nodded vigorously. The woman in the plain dress said, If I don't want to live, they all have to die. Hearing this, Yi Xian fell silent. Qing'er did not say that she was stronger than Big Brother and Father, but from her words, it could be heard that she could die together with Father and Big Brother. At this time, the woman in the plain dress said, That swordsman has no worries in his heart, no thoughts, and only wants to be defeated. His sword has reached the pinnacle of emotionlessness. Your father's sword Dao seems to be emotionless, but in fact, the core is love, which is another pinnacle. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the plain dress. What about you, Qing'er? The woman in the plain dress glanced at Yi Xian, but did not say anything. At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, I know. Yi Xian said with a smile, What do you know? Xiao Ta said, Master said, he said that this sister's sword was born from obsession, and because of this obsession, she once guarded a universe for countless years. This obsession is love, and because of this obsession, she once destroyed a universe. This obsession is emotionlessness. She reached the pinnacle of emotionlessness, and also reached the pinnacle of love. And whether it is love or emotionlessness, it is all because of obsession. If she let go of this obsession, she will surpass her present, and reach a very, very, very terrifying level. Yi Xian frowned, Let go of obsession? Xiao Ta said, Yes. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the plain dress, Qing'er, if you let go of obsession, will you become stronger? The woman did not answer. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, Qing'er, why don't you let go of obsession? The woman in the plain dress still did not answer. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, and was about to ask. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, you silly, you are this sister's obsession. If you want her to let go of obsession, it is the same as asking her to kill you. If she kills you, she will really let go of obsession. You fool. Yi Xian's expression froze, and he turned to look at the woman in the plain dress, Qing'er. I am your obsession? The woman in the plain dress suddenly pulled on Yi Xian's hand, and said softly, It doesn't matter if it is obsession or not, as long as I don't want to die, no one can kill me. As for the next step, without you, everything is meaningless. You are not my obsession, you are my everything for the rest of my life. Everything for the rest of his life. Yi Xian held the woman's hand tightly, and did not speak for a long time. Wu Ku glanced at him. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. The woman in the plain dress and Yi Xian did not speak. After a while, the three of them entered a star field. Wuji Star Field. There was a powerful family here, and that was the Wu clan. As soon as the three of them stepped into Wuji Star Field, a middle-aged man appeared in front of them. When he saw Wu Ku, the middle-aged man was slightly surprised, and then said happily, Young miss is back. Wu Ku nodded, Take me to see my father. The middle-aged man hurriedly said, Okay. The three of them followed the middle-aged man into the distance, and soon, the three of them arrived at a large hall. There were more than a dozen people in the hall, and the leader was a middle-aged man who looked somewhat similar to Wu Ku. Obviously, this was Wu Ku's father. Wu Ku did not speak, but looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked out, and he cupped his fists at the middle-aged man. "Uncle, I am Yi Xian, and I have come to the Wu clan to propose marriage." Propose marriage. As soon as he said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yi Xian. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "Propose marriage?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The middle-aged man was expressionless. "Don't you know that Ku heir is already engaged to the Nanli clan?" Yi Xian looked at Wu Ku, and Wu Ku shook his head. "I have never agreed to it." The middle-aged man gazed coldly at Wu Ku. "Do you need to agree to this?" Wu Ku frowned when she heard this, and she was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "This is little Ku's marriage. Don't you need her to agree to it?" The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. "Who the hell are you?" Yi Xian was about to speak when the woman in a plain dress suddenly drew the walk sword. Hiss. The others didn't even have the time to react before the walk sword stabbed into the middle-aged man's mouth and nailed him to the wall. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. Yi Xian hadn't expected that Qing would suddenly attack. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. "I didn't kill him." Yi Xian was speechless. The plainly dressed woman blinked her eyes. "Continue." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he glanced at the surroundings and said, "The martial clan. Get someone else to come out here and talk. All of us are cultured people, so don't attack us verbally. I'm doing this for your own good." The elders within the hall gazed at the woman in a plain dress with fear in their eyes. Our patriarch was nailed to the wall just like that? He didn't even have the ability to fight back. This woman isn't simple at all. At this moment, the middle-aged man who was being stared at was even more astounded to the extreme. He actually hadn't been able to react just now. Suddenly, a voice resounded from within the hall. "Wu Ku, did you bring an outsider here to bully my martial clan?" Yi Xian turned around and saw an old man walking in from outside the hall. Wu Ku said, "The Grand Elder, Wu Tu." Yi Xian glanced at the Grand Elder and was about to speak when the Grand Elder gazed coldly at the woman in a plain dress. "Guards." As soon as he finished speaking, two black-robed figures appeared here. Both of them were at the mortal-breaking realm. The Grand Elder stared at the woman in a plain dress. "Kill this woman first." Yi Xian was speechless. Wu Ku's expression instantly changed drastically, and she was just about to speak when the woman in a plain dress suddenly gazed at her. "Miss, if you don't mind, then I'll kill your entire family. In that way, your troubles will be resolved." Wu Ku was speechless. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. How flustered. End of this chapter. Chapter 16-19. Yi Xian broke out in cold sweat when he heard Qing Er. Qing Er's way of thinking was truly too dangerous. Wu Ku was speechless as well. This big shot had actually asked her if she would mind annihilating her clan. Moreover, this big shot didn't seem like he was joking. Wu Ku had no choice but to look at Yi Xian and seek help from Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Qing Er, I think that we can try peaceful means before resorting to force." The woman nodded. "All right, I'll do as you say." She sat down at the side and remained silent. Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Qing had no intention of attacking again. Meanwhile, the martial ancestor suddenly roared with laughter. Yi Xian gazed at the Grand Elder. "What's wrong with this geezer now?" The Grand Elder gazed at her and ridiculed. "Annihilate my martial race? How arrogant of you. Come on. Destroy it for the old man to see." Yi Xian was flabbergasted when he heard this. Is this geezer stupid? Wu Ku was extremely shocked as well. She was about to speak when Qing Er suddenly said, "Summon the ancestor." Summon the ancestor. Yi Xian was speechless. The Grand Elder ridiculed, "Summon the ancestor? Do you think you're worthy of summoning the ancestor of my martial race? You." Meanwhile, The walk sword that nailed the martial race's patriarch suddenly flew out, and then it pierced the center of the Grand Elder's forehead and nailed him to a nearby pillar. All the experts of the martial race were stunned, including the Grand Elder. At this moment, his mind had gone blank. I don't even have the ability to fight back. At this moment, the minds of all the experts of the martial race instantly cleared up. She's a big shot. The martial race's patriarch stared fixedly at her. Who exactly are you? She didn't answer him, and she gazed at Wuku instead. Who's the strongest fighter in your martial race? Wuku hesitated for a moment and said, Ancestor. She nodded. Ask him to come here. Wuku, meanwhile, the martial clan's patriarch spoke in a low voice. There's no enmity between my martial clan and you, so why are you humiliating my martial clan? The plainly dressed woman shook her head. I'm not interested in you. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Brother, you talk to them. If things don't go well, the entire clan will be exterminated. Clan extermination. Yi Xian was speechless. The faces of the martial clan experts in the hall darkened. This was too much. Yi Xian looked at the martial clan patriarch. This time, I'm here to propose marriage. Little Ku will be my woman from now on. Don't let her get married to some non-Li clan. He didn't want to be long-winded. There was no way to communicate normally with the Wu clan. The martial clan's patriarch stared at Yi Xian. What if my martial clan disagrees? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, You don't agree? The martial clan's patriarch looked at Yi Xian. If I don't agree, what are you going to do? Yi Xian sighed softly. Martial clan's patriarch, I'm going to say one last thing. This is really the last thing. Look at me. Am I not outstanding? The martial clan's patriarch said coldly, You are outstanding, but can you compare to the non-Li clan? The non-Li clan is the #1 clan in the world. If my martial clan can form a marriage alliance with them, my martial clan's status will be greatly improved. How can you help my martial clan by marrying you? Yi Xian turned to look at Wuku. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Wuku nodded. Then let's go. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. He was speechless towards this martial clan. If it wasn't for Wuku, he would have killed this martial clan. Qing was so terrifying. Were they blind? Couldn't they see? He really didn't want to talk nonsense with these people. However, it couldn't be helped. After all, this was Wuku's family. He couldn't really destroy the martial clan. The three of them were about to leave. However, the martial clan's patriarch said, Xiao Ku, if you step out of this door today, you will no longer be a member of the martial clan. Expelled from the martial clan. Wuku stopped. After a while, she smiled. All right. She didn't have any hope for this family anymore. Her visit this time was actually to give this family a chance. However, she was disappointed. Soon, the three of them left the martial clan. Inside the hall, the martial clan's patriarch's face was extremely ugly. After a while, he suddenly said, Inform the non-Li clan. Not far away, the great elder said in a deep voice, That woman's strength. He was quite afraid of that woman in a plain dress. The martial clan's patriarch was expressionless. She's just one person. After leaving the martial clan, Yi Xian looked at Wuku. Xiao Ku, why don't you go to the 9th dimension? Wuku smiled. That's what I plan to do. Hearing this, Yi Xian instantly smiled. Wuku's strength was extremely terrifying. If he went to the 9th dimension, it would be of great help to the 9th dimension. In fact, he also didn't understand what the martial clan was thinking. Wuku was at the breaking mortality realm and had such terrifying combat strength. It could be said that her future was boundless. Why did they want her to get married? Wouldn't it be better for her to stay in her own clan? As if he knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Wuku suddenly said, The non-Li clan is not simple. Yi Xian looked at Wuku. Not simple? Wuku nodded. The non-Li clan once received help from the laws of the universe. Moreover, there have been many generations of guardians of the laws of the universe in the Nanli clan. Let's put it this way. The Nanli clan is equivalent to the Celestial Court. Of course, they aren't as strong as the Celestial Court, but they are protected by the laws of the universe. Moreover, the Nanli clan's bloodline is a bit special. The Martial clan wants me to marry them because they want to take advantage of their bloodline. Yi Xian was confused. Is it as special as my bloodline? Wu Ku shook his head. Far from it. Yi Xian was even more confused. Then why don't they want you to marry me? Wu Ku rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. They don't know how powerful your bloodline is. Saying this, he glanced at Qing. They don't know how terrifying this senior is. Yi Xian nodded. In fact, it was mainly because they couldn't kill people. If they let Qing kill a few more people, the people of the Martial clan would probably be afraid. At this moment, Qing suddenly turned to look. The next moment, the space there split open and an old man suddenly walked out. Wu Ku said in a low voice, Nanli clan. Nanli clan. The old man wore a large robe and hid his hands in his sleeves. After coming out, his gaze fell on Wu Ku. Little girl, I heard that you would rather be expelled from the Martial clan than marry into the Nanli clan. Wu Ku smiled. Elder Nanli Mu, why do you insist? The old man named Nanli Mu shook his head. I'm not forcing you. It's just that the old man feels that you're looking down on the Nanli clan. Right now, it's not a matter of marriage, it's a matter of face. A matter of face. Wu Ku smiled. Then what does the Nanli clan want to do? Nanli Mu looked at Wu Ku. I think it's best if you disappear from this world forever. Hearing this, Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, Qing looked at Yi Xian. Can I kill this one? Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Nanli Mu looked at Qing and smiled. Kill the old man? You're so arrogant. Come, the old man is standing right here, you can try and kill him. Qing nodded. All right. As soon as she finished speaking, a sword pierced Nanli Mu's forehead. No one was able to react in time. Even Yi Xian and Wu Ku did not see how Qing attacked. It was an instant kill. In the air, Nanli Mu was completely stunned. He died just like that? Qing looked at Yi Xian innocently. He asked me to kill him. Yi Xian was speechless. In the air, Nanli Mu suddenly opened his palm, and in the next moment, a voice transmission stone flew out and disappeared into the sky. Nanli Mu stared at Qing with a ferocious expression. No matter who you are, everyone related to you will die without a burial place. As he spoke, his body gradually became illusory. Next to him, Yi Xian was speechless. This guy was dead, so be it. He was still calling for help. Wu Ku also shook his head. The Nanli clan was used to being arrogant and domineering. They were too arrogant and domineering. Soon, the old man disappeared completely. After the old man disappeared, Yi Xian was speechless. He felt that age had nothing to do with intelligence. Living for a long time did not mean that one was intelligent, especially those who were high and mighty. Some people became more and more stupid the longer they lived. Meanwhile, the Wu clan patriarch appeared again, and he glanced coldly at Wu Ku. It's not too late for you to change your mind now. Otherwise, you'll die without a burial place. Wu Ku shook his head and smiled. Father, I'm very disappointed in you. Even now, you still haven't come to your senses. The Wu clan patriarch said angrily, Idiot. Do you know how strong the Nanli clan is? Not only do they have 3 mortal terminators, but they also have over a dozen mortal breaking realm cultivators. Besides that, they have the supreme laws of the universe behind them. As he spoke, he glanced at Qing. I admit that she's very strong, but no matter how strong she is, can she be stronger than the laws of the universe? Yi Xian, Qing glanced at the Wu clan patriarch and didn't speak. Wu Ku shook his head and sighed in his heart. The laws of the universe? The laws of the universe that my clan revered like gods can't even withstand a single strike from this woman. Meanwhile, the Wu clan patriarch spoke again. The experts of the Nanli clan are on their way here. It's not too late for you to change your mind now. Wu Ku glanced at the Wu clan patriarch and didn't speak again. Because she felt that it was useless no matter what she said. That the woman in a plain dress could instantly defeat the laws of the universe? She knew that her father wouldn't believe it. In fact, even she wouldn't believe it. Before she saw the woman in a plain dress, she wouldn't believe that such a terrifying expert existed in the world. Suddenly, the sky in the distance cracked open. In the next moment, an extremely powerful aura suddenly emerged from that space, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to walk out. The moment the middle-aged man walked out, the space around him rippled. The middle-aged man's gaze descended onto the woman in a plain dress. You killed the members of my Nanli clan? The woman in a plain dress nodded. The middle-aged man walked slowly towards the woman in a plain dress and smiled. You think you're very strong? The woman in a plain dress nodded again. The middle-aged man stopped and smiled. Come, I'll give you 3 strikes. P.S. I haven't thought of an excuse for being late today. I don't know what to do now. Chapter 16:20. I'll let you strike 3 times. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. Let the woman strike 3 times? Yi Xian was speechless, and then he shook his head and fell silent. Wu Ku shook his head and sighed as well. The martial clan's patriarch gazed coldly at the woman. Aren't you very good at fighting? Draw your sword now. The woman shook her head. How boring. As she spoke, she gazed at Wu Ku. Where's the Nanli clan? Just point me in the right direction. Wu Ku hesitated for a moment, and then he pointed to the right. Go to the Nanli region. The woman nodded, and then the walk sword suddenly left its sheath. A sword howl resounded as a ray of light tore through the sky, and it instantly vanished into the starry sky. Wu Ku, who stood by Yi Xian's side, pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve and asked, What's she doing? Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiao Ta spoke abruptly. Big sister is raiding a home. Raiding a home. Yi Xian was quite puzzled. What's raiding a home? Xiao Ta fell silent for a moment before he said, Young master, I'm just a pagoda. Don't ask me everything. What do you expect a pagoda to know? Yi Xian was dumbfounded by what he heard. Wu Ku shook his head and smiled. This Xiao Ta is really quite amusing. The middle-aged man gazed at the woman and smiled. Can that strike of yours annihilate my Nanli clan? The woman didn't look at the middle-aged man, and she gazed at Yi Xian instead. I'm leaving. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, To search for the laws of the universe? The woman nodded. That's only one of them. I have to find that person who killed before me. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, All right. The woman walked over to Yi Xian, and then she patted Yi Xian lightly on the shoulder and spoke gently. I'll appear when the laws of the universe appear once more. Take care of yourself. Yi Xian smiled and said, Qing'er, you too. The woman nodded and was about to leave. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man suddenly smiled and said, You're leaving? Did you ask me? The plainly dressed woman glanced at the middle-aged man. Why don't you turn around and look? The middle-aged man was about to speak when an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The middle-aged man said in a trembling voice, Clan leader. The Nanli clan is gone. The Nanli tribe was gone. The middle-aged man frowned. What's gone? The elder said with a trembling voice, The Nanli tribe is gone. The middle-aged man glared at the old man. What nonsense are you spouting? The old man's face was pale. Just now, a sword suddenly entered the south parting boundary, and then the entire south parting boundary was gone. The middle-aged man was stunned, and then he said furiously, How could that be possible? The old man said in horror, It's true. That sword entered the south parting realm, and then the entire south parting realm. The middle-aged man suddenly turned his head to look at the plain-dressed woman below. "It's you." The lady in the plain dress walked towards the middle-aged man slowly. "It's me." The middle-aged man said viciously, "You killed so many living beings with a single sword strike. Aren't you afraid of karma?" The plain-dressed woman looked at the middle-aged man. "Is this something you should be worrying about now?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man's face instantly turned pale. Yes. Was this something he should be worried about now? Shouldn't he be worrying about his own life and death? On the other side, the Marshall clan's patriarch was stunned as well. The Namli tribe was gone just like that? At this moment, the Wu clan patriarch's hands were trembling. He knew that he had severely underestimated the woman in front of him. At this moment, the woman in the plain dress had already walked in front of the middle-aged man. She looked at the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man stared fixedly at the woman in the plain dress. He opened his palm, and a golden talisman appeared in his hand. "Do you know what this is?" The plainly dressed woman looked at the middle-aged man. "Call for help." The middle-aged man's expression turned fierce. "This is a law talisman. Using it can summon the laws of the universe." "Woman, no matter how strong you are, will you be stronger than the laws of the universe?" As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and then the law talisman transformed into a ray of golden light that vanished into the starry sky. The woman in the plain dress raised her head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. The starry sky there suddenly started trembling, and then numerous formidable auras swept down. The entire starry sky seethed with excitement. A figure gradually appeared in the depths of the starry sky. At the sight of this, Yi Xian blinked his eyes. What kind of law was this? The laws of the universe. The middle-aged man was instantly overwhelmed with excitement when he saw the laws of the universe, and he immediately bowed deeply. "Welcome, laws of the universe." As he spoke, he slowly knelt down. The old man by his side was overwhelmed with excitement as well, and he immediately knelt down and kowtowed incessantly. On the other side, the Marshall clan's patriarch hesitated for a moment before he slowly knelt down as well. He seemed to have noticed something, and he turned around to look at Wu Ku and said furiously, "Quickly kneel down." Wu Ku glanced at the Marshall clan's patriarch with a cold and indifferent expression, and he didn't speak. The Marshall clan's patriarch glanced coldly at Wu Ku when he saw Wu Ku remain indifferent. "You'll regret this." As he spoke, he raised his head and gazed at the figure in the depths of the starry sky. At this moment, the plainly dressed lady was also looking at the illusory figure. In the starry sky, the illusory figure's gaze fell onto the plainly dressed lady. After a moment of silence, she immediately turned illusory and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the formidable aura instantly vanished as well, and the starry sky returned to calm. "She's someone that I can't afford to offend." "She's gone." The patriarch of the South Li clan and the others were stunned. "She's gone just like that?" The woman in a plain dress withdrew her gaze and shook her head. "It actually wasn't me." "What a pity." As she spoke, she gazed at the Southernly patriarch. "You're useless now." As soon as she finished speaking, a sword pierced through his head. Hiss. Blood sprayed. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. The Marshall clan's patriarch was dumbstruck when he witnessed this scene. At this moment, his mind cleared up. Why did the laws of the universe leave? There was only one explanation. It was that he couldn't defeat this woman. Who exactly is she? Even the laws of the universe didn't fight and fled. "I'm finished." That was the only thought in the Marshall clan's patriarch's mind right now. The Southernly patriarch stared fixedly at the woman in a plain dress. "Who exactly are you?" The woman didn't answer him, and she turned around to gaze at Yi Xian instead. "I'm leaving." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." The woman nodded slightly. She was just about to leave when she seemed to have thought of something, and she turned around to gaze at Wu Ku. "Where's the Marshall clan? Point me in the direction." "Where's the Marshall clan?" Wu Ku's face froze. The martial clan's patriarch's expression instantly changed drastically, and he immediately bowed deeply to the woman. Senior, my martial clan has offended you in the past. Please be magnanimous and spare my martial clan. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. Kill? Kill. The martial clan's patriarch immediately turned around and bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. Nephew, I represent the martial clan in agreeing to the marriage between you and little Ku. From now on, you're a member of my martial clan, and we're a family. Yi Xian was speechless. This fellow is really shameless. Wu Ku shook her head slightly, and then she gazed at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded, and then he gazed at the woman in a plain dress. Qing, you can go. Qing nodded. You have to work hard. I have a feeling that something bad is about to happen. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Something bad? Qing nodded slightly. I have a premonition. My premonitions are usually not wrong, so you have to be careful. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Can you sense what's about to happen? Qing shook her head. No. I'm not good at anything besides killing, and I'm not interested in understanding it. Yi Xian was speechless. Qing continued. Remember, I can kill, but I can't save people. If you're erased, I can't save you. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. I'll work hard. Qing nodded, and just as she was about to leave, Yi Xian suddenly said, You know that in my body, previously, there were times when he felt that he wasn't himself, and that feeling made him panic. Because he was now sure that in his body was the founder of the Cosmos God Court, and the other party's strength was definitely stronger than his. What he was most worried about was that he would be controlled by the other party. Qing suddenly said, Don't worry, although he'll affect you, you won't become him. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Qing looked at Yi Xian. Because he doesn't dare to wake up. If he does, I'll kill him. Yi Xian was speechless. The green girl continued, You can take all the benefits he left behind, including all the good karma he had, you can inherit them. She paused, then continued, You can understand it this way, you're one, but he can't control you, and you can't become him, but you can control him, and make him become you. Understand? Hearing this, Yi Xian blinked. I understand a little. Didn't this mean that he could devour the God Master of the Cosmos God Court? As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked again, Is he willing? Qing's lips curled into a mocking smile. What can he do even if he's unwilling? With that, she turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the starry sky, and no one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, the Wu clan leader heaved a sigh of relief. With that woman here, he felt like he was suffocating. Too terrifying. As if thinking of something, he turned to look at Yi Xian, and at this moment, he felt that Yi Xian was more pleasing to the eye. Not only was he young and promising, but he also had such a terrifying backer. If Wu Ku married him, wouldn't that mean that the Wu clan would have a super expert protecting them? Thinking of this, the Wu clan leader smiled. Nephew, let's return to the Wu clan to hold the wedding. Hold the wedding? Yi Xian was stunned, then he asked, Hold the wedding? The Wu clan leader smiled. Of course. Didn't you and my daughter promise to marry each other? Since you've already promised to marry each other, of course we have to hold the wedding. There's no time like the present, I think today is very suitable, let's hold the wedding today. Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Ku, but Wu Ku was expressionless, and didn't speak. Yi Xian looked at the Wu clan leader. Your skin is thicker than mine. FPZW. Chapter 1621. Of course, Yi Xian and Wu Ku did not return to the martial clan. To Yi Xian, the martial clan was a weirdo. The martial clan leader was worlds apart from the immortal emperor tribe's leader, Dongli Jing. He could not understand why there was such a huge difference in intelligence when they were both clan leaders. Wu Ku also did not choose to return to the martial clan because she was completely disappointed in the clan. From the start, the clan had only treated her as a tool. It was better to not have such a clan. Yi Xian brought Wuke back to the Cosmos Court star field. Although the Cosmos Court had been destroyed, there were still many people under the Cosmos Court. However, the middle and top forces of the Cosmos Court were all dead. Yi Xian found Yan Xiaoxiao. There was a woman beside her. She was the intelligence chief of the Cosmos Court, Zhi Qing. Upon seeing Yi Xian, Yan Xiaoxiao said in a low voice, "Many star fields below are in complete chaos after knowing that the Cosmos Court was destroyed." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "It's a complete mess?" Yan Xiaoxiao nodded. Initially, with the Cosmos Court suppressing, many places were still in order. However, the evil forces have revived and we do not have enough manpower. Not only are we lacking manpower, we are also not strong enough to suppress the star fields below. We can only allow the strong forces in the star fields to do as they please. The most chaotic places are the Void Zone and the God's Penitentiary. These two places are no longer under our control. Yi Xian was curious, "What is this place?" Zhi Qing suddenly said, "The Void Zone is a rather complicated place. It's a world of nothingness, and there are some special beings living there, the Void Tribe. The Void Tribe is extremely powerful and very difficult to deal with." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Why do we have to deal with them?" Zhi Qing shook her head and smiled. "It is not that we are purposely targeting them. The Void Tribe has a terrifying ability. They can turn the outside world into a void world. In other words, they can devour the outside world. If we let them out, the star fields outside will be devoured by them bit by bit. After devouring, they will become very strong. Therefore, the master of the Cosmos Court had no choice but to suppress them in the Void Zone." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Can't you suppress it now?" Zhi Qing nodded, "Yes. Most importantly, they know that the Cosmos Court has been destroyed. Therefore, they are preparing to leave their nest. Once they come out, it will be a huge disaster for the outside world." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian asked, "What about the God's Penitentiary?" Zhi Qing said, "A prison. There are some extremely evil people living there. There are also people on the Cosmos God Court's wanted list." Yi Xian thought for a while. Then he said, "Can I not care about that?" Yan Xiaoxiao immediately shook her head, "No." Yi Xian was confused. "Why?" Yan Xiaoxiao looked at Yi Xian. "You are the founder of the Cosmic Divine Court and the first Divine Master. Also, you were the one who sealed the outermost Void Zone back then. Once you release them, they won't let you off." Yan Xiaoxiao continued, "You have to interfere. If you don't, the entire universe will be filled with demons." Yan Xiaoxiao continued, "You have to care. If you don't, the entire universe will be filled with demons." Yan Xiaoxiao stared at Yi Xian. "You don't want to interfere?" Yi Xian nodded. He really didn't want to interfere. The Void Zone and the God's Penitentiary had nothing to do with him. Yi Xian nodded. He really did not want to get involved. The Void Realm and the Divine Penitentiary had nothing to do with him. Yan Xiaoxiao nodded. "Since you don't want to interfere, then leave." Yi Xian turned to leave. At this moment, Yan Xiaoxiao said, "If the Void Zone comes out, no one will be able to stay out of it. Especially you." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Yan Xiaoxiao looked at Yi Xian. "Like I said, you were the one who sealed them. Do you think they will let you go? Moreover, you can stay out of it, but what about your friends? For example, the nine-dimensional universe. Once the Void Tribe comes out, the entire universe will be their target. Moreover, if they are allowed to devour more worlds, their strength will grow stronger." Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Zhi Qing suddenly said, "The seal is gone." Hearing this, everyone looked at Zhi Qing. Zhi Qing's expression was dark. "I just received news that the seal that sealed the strongest member of the Void Tribe has disappeared." Yan Xiaoxiao frowned. "How is that possible?" Zhi Qing said solemnly, "Someone helped them." Yan Xiaoxiao asked, "Who?" Azure City, Yi family, ancestral shrine. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi Mansion elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi Mansion guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'm willing to risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned, Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders, Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, you should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, this subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply, this subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu's head spun, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 1622. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian almost went berserk. This fellow has been very naughty recently. He needs to be taught a lesson. At this moment, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly said, you can forge this imperial divinity armor. Yi Xian looked at Yan Xiaoxiao, and Yan Xiaoxiao said in a low voice, this armor can't stop the lady in the plain dress or the laws of the universe. However, not many people below them can easily break this armor. Ji Qing also said, this little one is saying that if you can really forge this armor, your combat strength will reach a very abnormal level. Yi Xian asked, is it easy to forge this armor? Yan Xiaoxiao shook her head. No. It's very difficult. Unless the Earth Spirit clan is willing to help with the entire clan. Even if they use their entire clan, I'm afraid they aren't 100% confident. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Is it that difficult? Yan Xiaoxiao looked at Yi Xian. It's much more difficult than you think. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I'll make a trip to the Earth Spirit clan. He still decided to forge this imperial divinity armor. Although the experience with the divine war armor wasn't good, it was undeniable that it was very abnormal. When he had the divine war armor, he basically beat up mortal destroyers like they were his children. It was very useful. However, he couldn't encounter experts at the level of the laws of the universe. Apart from experts at this level, this armor was basically invincible. Now, the laws of the universe wouldn't easily appear. Therefore, this armor was worth forging. Yi Xian immediately brought everyone to the Earth Spirit clan. Because they had the universal instrument, they arrived at the Earth Spirit world in a short while. After arriving at the Earth Spirit clan, Yi Xian saw Shan Qiu and the left and right elders. After seeing Yi Xian's blueprint, Shan Qiu immediately called for a meeting. almost all the legendary blacksmiths in the entire Earth Spirit clan came. There were really a lot of them. There were a total of 39 legendary blacksmiths. At this moment, all the blacksmiths were surrounding Yi Xian's blueprint. Everyone's hearts were filled with excitement and fanaticism. It was as if a man who had been single for decades had suddenly seen a naked beauty. Hunger and thirst. Inside the hall, everyone spoke up one after another. It was extremely intense. Yi Xian and the others were dumbfounded. Right at this moment, an angry shout suddenly resounded from within the hall. "All of you, get out of the way." Yi Xian turned to look. Not far away, a long-bearded old man walked into the hall. The long-bearded old man wore a thick set of iron armor, and in his hand was a large hammer that emitted lightning. The blacksmiths in the hall were enraged when they heard the angry shout, but they fell silent when they saw that it was the long-bearded elder. Mountain Iron. He was the #1 blacksmith of the Earth Spirit clan. He had already created 3 perfect-level legendary divine items. In the Earth Spirit clan, his forging technique was #1. Shan Tai quickly walked to the front of the hill and carefully looked at the blueprint. A moment later, he became excited. After a long time, he suddenly took a deep breath and said, "The person who designed this blueprint is truly the #1 genius in history." Shan Xiu said in a deep voice, "Elder Shan Tai, is it possible for the Earth Spirit clan to forge this item?" After a moment of silence, Shan Tai said, "It requires all of us to work together. Besides that, the materials are a huge problem because the Earth Spirit clan doesn't have some of the materials required. Moreover, in order to forge this, we have to go to the fire world and use the natural advantages there. The most difficult part is still the materials and rune spells, because this armor requires a large number of rune spells and some ancient formations, which are our Earth Spirit clan's weakness in this area." As he spoke, he shook his head. "It's difficult." Shan Xiu's face sank when he heard that. At this moment, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly said, "In terms of the materials, the Cosmos Court and the Earth Spirit clan should have enough. Even if it's not enough, we can use our power to search for them. So, it's not a huge problem. Besides that, the fire world that Elder mentioned just happens to be under the control of the Cosmos Court. The Earth Spirit clan can move there. That's not a huge problem either. As for the talisman techniques and formations, I can help with that." Everyone looked at Yan Xiaoxiao, and Yan Xiaoxiao said, "I think the most difficult part is the technique. If the Earth Spirit clan thinks that the technique is fine, then the other problems are not too big." "The technique?" Shan Tai suddenly roared with laughter. "Don't worry, young miss, the technique is fine." Meanwhile, the right elder suddenly said, "Who does it belong to once it's forged? Who does it belong to?" The surroundings suddenly fell silent when they heard this. The members of the Earth Spirit clan had calmed down as well. Who does it belong to? They would definitely refuse if it belongs to the Cosmos Court. How could the Cosmos Court give a divine artifact that I created with the strength of my entire clan? Wouldn't that be like working for free? They refused. The fervor and excitement in the eyes of many of the Earth Spirit clan's blacksmiths had gradually vanished. Yan Xiaoxiao gazed at Yi Xian. The armor was definitely for Yi Xian, but the precondition was that Yi Xian had to convince the Earth Spirit clan. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Uncle Shan Xiu, to tell you the truth, my father gave this blueprint to me." Shan Xiu gazed at Yi Xian, "Brother Yang? The god of protection." Everyone gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." He said that he has a very good relationship with the Earth Spirit clan, and he asked me to give this blueprint to all of you to help me forge it. When he spoke up to this point, he glanced at the blacksmiths from the Earth Spirit clan. "Of course, I'm aware that it's extremely difficult to forge, and the materials consumed are incalculable. So, it's fine if the Earth Spirit clan feels that it's difficult for me to forge it. I can just give up on forging it." Shan Xiu suddenly spoke furiously, "What are you talking about? We're all family, so it's not difficult at all. Yi Xian glanced at the other blacksmiths from the Earth Spirit clan. Meanwhile, Shan Xiu suddenly said, "Everyone, the god of protection asked this little fellow to come to us. What do all of you think?" As he spoke, he gazed at the right elder. The right elder hesitated for a moment and said, "Heir." Meanwhile, Shan Tai suddenly said, "What do you mean? Since the god of protection asked this little fellow to come to us, then it proves that the god of protection treats us as brothers. Our Earth Spirit clan will definitely help you." As he spoke, he glanced at the blacksmiths in the hall. "Do all of you have any questions?" All of them shook their heads. Actually, all of them were quite happy at this moment, including Shan Tai. What did it mean for the god of protection to ask this little fellow to bring the blueprint to the Earth Spirit clan? It meant that the god of protection really treated the Earth Spirit clan as one of their own. Of course, they had to help. Shan Xiu smiled, "Then let's begin right now." Yi Xian immediately bowed respectfully, "Thank you, Uncle Shan Xiu, uncles, and elders." At this moment, his heart was still a little complicated. His father's face was really not just ordinary. Shan Xiu smiled, "We're all family, so there's no need to be so polite." The others nodded as well. A family. Those 3 words were really nice to hear. Yi Xian smiled, "Then I'll make the decision to give the fire dimension to the Earth Spirit clan. In the future, the fire dimension will belong to the Earth Spirit clan." All of them were visibly moved when they heard this. They'd coveted the fire dimension for a very long time. Shan Xiu spoke in a low voice, "Little fellow, is that true? The fire dimension belongs to the Cosmos Court." Yi Xian smiled, "I'm the divine master of the Cosmos Court now." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Obviously, they didn't know what happened in the Cosmos Court. That was normal. The entire Earth Spirit clan was only interested in forging. They really didn't care about anything else. Shan Xiu looked at Yi Xian, "Is that true?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." Shan Xiu sighed, "You. In just a few days, you've become the divine master of the Cosmos Court." Yi Xian smiled, "It's a long story." Shan Xiu nodded, "Ha. We'll talk about it later. Let's forge this divine armor first." Then, he looked at Shan Tai, "You'll be the chief blacksmith. From now on, you can order everyone in the Earth Spirit clan, including me. Apart from that, you can use all the materials." Shan Tai nodded, "Sure." Soon, the Earth Spirit clan started to get busy, using all the power of the clan. Yan Xiaoxiao glanced at Yi Xian, "Young Master Yi, your father seems to be very influential." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Very bold." Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, "Then, shall we go to the Void World? There are our people there who chose to stay and continue to be loyal to us. They're in a terrible situation now." Yi Xian nodded, "Let's go and find out more about it." Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, "Then, let's go." Yi Xian and the rest left, leaving the Earth Spirit clan in charge of forging the divine armor. Along the way, Yi Xian was silent. He was most worried about Mu Xiaodao and Xiao Er. He didn't know if they would be in danger. He also wanted to make them stay, but he couldn't do anything about it. They had their own thoughts, and he couldn't control them. Soon, Yi Xian took them to the Void Realm outside the domain. However, when they arrived at the Void World Star area, Yan Xiaoxiao frowned. "Something's wrong." Mo Xiao Shuang looked around and slowly clenched his right hand. Yi Xian also realized that something was wrong. At this moment, the educated youth suddenly said, "I can't contact them." Yan Xiaoxiao said in a low voice, "You can't contact them?" The educated youth nodded, "I can't contact them at all." Then, she looked around, "Let's retreat first." Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, and everyone was about to retreat. However, at this moment, something strange happened. In the starry sky, many floating objects suddenly appeared, and they slowly fell. After a closer look, everyone's expression changed. These floating objects were all corpses. There were thousands of corpses. The educated youth looked at the corpses and said softly, "Our people are all gone." At this moment, a coffin suddenly fell from the sky and landed near Yi Xian in the blink of an eye. There was nothing in the coffin. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The woman was wearing a pure white robe. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled, "Young Master Yi, this is the first time we've met. Take this coffin as a greeting gift. Do you like it? P.S. Reader, egg, take this monthly ticket as a meeting gift. Do you like it? Green Phoenix, I love it. I like it a lot. Happy National Day. Love you all." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.